Chapter 1201. Everyone looked at each other, not knowing what to say. Yu Qianqiu suddenly grabbed Hong Tailong's clothes and said sternly, "Isn't it said that the experts of the divine realm are not allowed to attack the lower realms? Why does the demon god attack again and again without anyone stopping him?" Hong Tailong helplessly let go of his hand, shook his head and sighed. "The other experts of the divine realm naturally don't dare to do so, but the demon god is the #1 expert of the divine realm. Who can do anything to him if he doesn't abide by the rules? Unless Tao personally takes action, no one in the divine realm dares to do anything to him. This is the capital of his arrogance." After saying that, he squatted beside Wen Lanfeng and carefully examined him. He then patted Wen Lanfeng's chest and said with relief, "Fortunately, it's nothing serious. With his cultivation base, he should recover very quickly. To be able to survive the demon god's attack is already a great fortune in misfortune. My fire soul mystic weapon has been destroyed by the demon god's attack." Yu Qianqiu gritted his teeth, his heart filled with hatred. Once the demon god attacked, even the fire soul mystic weapon's chance of resurrection was cut off. He didn't know how the demon god did it. As long as he's fine. Hong Tailong stood up and gestured to everyone to carry Wen Lanfeng in. Bai Suzhen and the other women immediately helped Lu Yanqing up and comforted her, while Wei Chuanxiu and the other men carried Wen Lanfeng into the room. At this time, Hong Tailong turned around and patted Yu Qianqiu's shoulder, saying with a smile, "The fire soul mystic weapon can be refined again. Anyway, there are many experts in the divine mausoleum. The key is that you now have the metal spirit and earth spirit. After devouring them, not only will your cultivation base soar, you can also refine a large number of earth soul mystic weapons and gold soul mystic weapons. All in all, it's a big profit this time." As soon as these words came out, the haze on Yu Qianqiu's face immediately dispersed. Only then did he remember that Jin Tai and Hudu had been captured by him. He immediately sneered and said, "Damn it. I was almost confused by the demon god. How could I forget this? Where are the captured people? Locked up. By the way, that woman's body, they said it was the wife of Jin Tai's subordinate. What's going on?" Hong Tailong had a curious look on his face, as if he was trying to find some clues from Jiang Chen's face. He said enticingly, "If she is very important to you, why don't we buy her and bring her to the mausoleum of the god of sin? She might have a chance of resurrection there." Yu Qianqiu's face darkened. He pondered for a while and said slowly, "No need. She committed suicide. Before she died, she wanted me to bury her beside her mother. I should fulfill her wish. What's more, since he was dead, why bother with resurrecting after countless years? He might as well turn over a new leaf and start a new life, forgetting all the happiness and unhappiness of his previous life. Even if I can really be reborn, even if I die, I don't want to hide in the mausoleum of the god of sin and spend countless years in a daze. It's better to end everything once and for all." "You don't want to be reborn?" Hong Tailong was taken aback. He then chuckled strangely and said, "Is it because you robbed someone else's tomb in the mausoleum of the god of sin and are afraid of retribution if you hide in the mausoleum of the god of sin? So, this is called gauging the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a villain. You can think whatever you want." Yu Qianqiu let out a breath and said, "Where is she? I'm going to fulfill her last wish." Hong Tailong led him to the room where Mu Tianjiao's body was kept. Yu Qianqiu stared at her quietly for a while before extending his palm. A water dragon emerged from his palm and gently washed away the dirt and bloodstains on Mu Tianjiao's face. He then carried her and disappeared from the room with Hong Tailong. The two of them appeared in a valley not far from the Four Links Chamber of Commerce. They could see traces of a fight, but the two of them did not pay too much attention to it. They flashed into the air and looked at the town that was almost in ruins. The entire town was like a dead land, with not a single living person in sight. When the two of them arrived at the dilapidated Four Links Chamber of Commerce, they discovered a troublesome matter. Where was the grave of Mu Tianjiao's mother? Fortunately, the two of them found Nan Tianlong, who was struggling at death's door and had lost an arm. If they didn't rescue him in time, he would probably be dead. Hong Tailong quickly performed the rescue, and it took a while for Nan Tianlong to recover. However, Hong Tailong secretly transmitted his voice. His injuries are too severe. I'm helping to keep him alive, but he won't be able to hold on for long. Ask whatever you want to ask. Nan Tianlong, on the other hand, stared blankly at Mu Tianjiao, who was in Yu Qianzhou's embrace, and 2 streams of tears flowed down his cheeks. When the demonic path appeared, too many people died. Yu Qianzhou was already numb to it. He could only sigh and say, Nan Tianlong. Mu Tianjiao's last wish was to be buried together with her mother. Where is her mother's grave? Nan Tianlong whimpered and said vaguely, 50 miles to the north, in the flower field. Yu Qianzhou carried Mu Tianjiao and turned to leave. As a result, Hong Tailong's hand on Nan Tianlong's back loosened, and Nan Tianlong could no longer breathe. He fell to the ground with a thud. Without turning his head, Yu Qianzhou sighed and said, bring him along. The 2 of them carried Nan Tianlong and Nan Tianlong to a place 50 miles to the north. In the flower field, there were 2 tombs side by side. When Yu Qianzhou landed and saw Mu Bing's name on the tombstone on the left, he knew they had arrived. Yu Qianzhou used the earth art to build a grave beside the tombstone on the right. He then used the metal art to cast a golden coffin and placed Mu Tianjiao inside. After covering the coffin, he buried Nan Tianlong beside Mu Bing before helping the 2 of them erect tombstones. Before leaving, Yu Qianzhou found a pine tree sapling from a nearby mountain and planted it beside Mu Tianjiao's grave. He used the wood art to make the pine tree grow rapidly into a huge tree to shelter Mu Tianjiao from the wind and rain. After doing all this, he held on to Mu Tianjiao's tombstone and stood there for a long time. Then, he left with Hong Tailong. He did not say a single word from the beginning to the end. In Utopia's military camp, Yu Qianzhou stood on the platform and looked down at Jin Tailong, Hudu, and Qing Tian. It was unknown who had been kind enough to throw a woman's clothes for Qing Tian to wear. I have some questions to ask you. You'd better answer me honestly, and you might have a chance to live. Yu Qianzhou did not waste any time. He looked at the 3 trembling people and asked, did Wen Rui leak the secret to 3 knights when he attacked the realm of the divine ruin? Yes. Jin Tailong and Qing Tian answered immediately. Qing Tian added, Yan Zhuixing is Wen Rui's master. Huda's face stiffened. He really did not know about this. Demon Eye Ecstasy. It seems like Wen Rui has always been controlled by Yan Zhuixing. Yu Qianzhou nodded. His hands were clenched into fists behind his back. Right now, he only hated himself. He regretted not listening to Zhang Peng's words in a moment of soft-heartedness, causing the entire army to be annihilated. His sin was unforgivable. It's not time for the realm of the divine ruin to open yet. How did 3 knights get in? Yu Qianzhou said in a gloomy tone. Huda's face became miserable again. He still did not know about this. Jin Tailong lowered his head guiltily. In the end, Qing Tian Great Devil King sold him out on the spot. She pointed at him and said loudly, Demon King 3 knights did not know the method to enter the realm of the divine ruin. It was Jin Tailong who suggested that Demon King 3 knights go to the ancient forest to find Mu Yuanzi. Jin Tailong even personally accompanied 3 knights to the ancient forest. Only then did 3 knights have the method to open the realm of the divine ruin. Jin Tailong looked at Qing Tian with resentment and immediately knelt down in front of Yu Qianzhou. He hurriedly explained, I had no choice. Yu Qianzhou expressionlessly looked at him and said word by word, in other words, the method to enter the realm of the divine ruin was leaked by Mu Yuanzi. Since you went to the ancient forest with 3 knights, then tell me everything in detail. You cannot hide anything. Otherwise, you will die a horrible death. If you don't believe me, you can try. Jin Tailong was eager to push all responsibility away. He immediately told the story of how he and Demon King 3 knights went to the ancient forest to find Mu Yuanzi. At the same time, he emphasized that it was 3 knights who forced him to go with them. He did not say a single word when he got there, and Mu Yuanzi's attitude towards him was very bad. It seemed like he wanted to tell Yu Qianqiu that he, 3 knights, and Mu Yuanzi had always been at odds with each other. However, he had no way of proving that he and Yu Qianqiu were on the same side. After learning what had happened, Yu Qianqiu was so angry that his lungs almost exploded. That old guy could clearly hide in the Woodkiller Sea without any worries. As long as he didn't come out, Demon King 3 knights couldn't do anything to him. However, he didn't have any self-respect, and thought that it had nothing to do with him even if everyone outside died. Yu Qianqiu immediately shouted angrily towards the distance. Mu Yuanzi. Do you really think that you are the local tyrant of the 3 realms and no one dares to touch you? Others can't enter the Woodkiller Sea, but I can come and go as I please. Just you wait. His voice reverberated, filled with resentment. It's not worth getting angry with someone like that. We can slowly deal with them. Hong Tailong coughed, reminding him how to deal with the 3. Yu Qianqiu suddenly stared at the 3 and sneered, Jin Tailong, stay. The others will be temporarily locked up. Hearing that, Jin Tailong immediately begged for his life, kneeling and kowtowing. In order to survive, he would do anything. Usually, such people were the most dangerous. Zhang Peng quickly brought his men and escorted Ho Tu and Qing Tian away. Before they left, the 2 of them rejoiced and looked at the crying Jin Tailong with a pitiful gaze. When the other 2 couldn't see what was happening here, Yu Qianqiu gave Hong Tailong a meaningful glance. Hong Tailong flashed behind Jin Tai and slammed his palm onto Jin Tai's head. Pung! Jin Tai's head instantly exploded, causing golden dust to fill the sky and drift in all directions with the wind. It was as if the entire utopia had turned into a world of golden dust. Even the people from Misty Palace flashed outside, looking at the beautiful golden world far away. It was even more dazzling than fireworks. An hour later, all the flying golden powder had fallen down, and the surrounding area of tens of miles had become a dazzling golden field under the sunlight. Hong Tailong held a wriggling white ball of light in his palm. He immediately laughed and said, Jin Tailong, stop resisting pointlessly. Once this old dragon erases the memories of your primordial spirit, all the grudges between us will be written off. His 2 palms quickly hugged the white ball of light, and when the white ball of light completely stopped wriggling, he tossed it onto the general selection stage. Holding the white ball of light, Yu Qianqiu opened his mouth and sucked it into his stomach like a whale drawing water. Then, he quickly sat cross-legged on the general selection stage and closed his eyes. Chapter 1202. Boiling. At this moment, Yu Qianqiu's body could only be described as boiling. After the white ball of light was guided into his dantian, a bit of its essence transformed into Jin Tai's appearance. He swallowed the metal attribute white crystal bead into his stomach, then sat cross-legged on the spot that belonged to the white crystal bead. Immediately, it completely fused with Yu Qianqiu's body, becoming a part of Yu Qianqiu's body. The boundless cultivation base that he brought with him naturally became Yu Qianqiu's cultivation base. At the same time, Yu Qianqiu's fleshly body seemed to be very unused to such a powerful cultivation base. To be exact, he was not used to how to control such a powerful cultivation base. The boundless cultivation base within his dantian surged like raging waves. Yu Qianqiu quickly guided it out and circulated it within his meridians. In an instant, the unparalleled cultivation base was like a river bursting through a dam, gushing out violently. It rapidly rushed into his meridians throughout his limbs and bones, jolting the blood and qi in his entire body into chaos. The pain it brought was unimaginable to outsiders. Yu Qianqiu's entire body turned red, and traces of blood could be seen faintly seeping out from his 7 orifices. Hong Tailong, who was observing him from below the stage, actually heard the raging roars of a raging river coming from his body. In order to lessen the pain, Hong Tailong flashed up and sat cross-legged behind Yu Qianqiu. He placed both his palms on Yu Qianqiu's back, using his powerful cultivation base to help guide the berserk energy within Yu Qianqiu's body. The 2 of them sat on the stage for 3 days and 3 nights. When Hong Tailong retracted his palms, Yu Qianqiu slowly opened his eyes. Under the impact of his powerful cultivation base, the shackles in his fleshly body that had yet to reach his cultivation base were all broken through. Finally, the raging cultivation base in his body was tamed into a slowly flowing river, becoming one with his body and mind, completely submitting to his control. Haha. Looks like the difference in cultivation base is too great. Devouring isn't that easy. Not bad, not bad. His cultivation base broke through to the mid-stage minor god stage in one fell swoop. Kinti's death was worthwhile. His cultivation base was not wasted. Hong Tai-long stood up and laughed. Yu Qianqiu also stood up in surprise. He opened his arms and felt the brand new world that he could control in his body. It was a level that he could not even dream of before. It turned out that it was so powerful. He opened his arms to embrace the heavens and earth and softly shouted, "Come back." All of the golden powder that had been scattered within a radius of several tens of miles immediately rushed back to the military camp. In the blink of an eye, all of the golden powder had condensed into Kim Tai's original appearance. However, his eyes were closed peacefully, making him look like a lifelike statue. Below the stage, there was a finger-thick golden stick. Yu Qianqiu stretched out his 5 claws, and it immediately flashed into his hand. Following his will, it quickly turned into a golden stick with a balanced length and thickness. It was Kintai's golden cloud stick. This thing already has spirituality. As long as it is nurtured in a certain environment, it will probably become a second gold spirit in many years. Yu Qianqiu held the golden cloud stick in his hand and examined it. He immediately understood its attributes. Then, he casually tossed it and it stabbed into the ground beside Kinti's statue. Kinti's statue actually reached out a hand and grabbed it. It stood there motionlessly, like a guardian god in golden armor in a utopia military camp. Yu Qianqiu then carefully examined the changes in his cultivation base. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. Kinti's cultivation base has already reached the mid-stage minor god stage. After my ascendant immortal cultivation base fused with it, it actually did not grow at all. Looks like my original cultivation base is really not worth mentioning compared to Kinti's. That's natural. The higher the cultivation base, the greater the gap between each level. Similarly, it's harder to improve. It's not as simple as 1 + 1. Hong Tai-long laughed and made an analogy. This is also the reason why an expert can deal with many experts with slightly lower cultivation base. Zhang Peng, who was silently listening to their conversation behind the stage, finally understood what had happened to his master. Immediately, he flashed to the front of the stage and congratulated, "Congratulations, master." Yu Qianqiu nodded with a beaming smile, and said, "Now, we can bring Huda here. I'll help them get out of this abyss of suffering." Hong Tai-long clicked his tongue on one side and shook his head. Then, he flashed away from the stage to make preparations. Yes. Zhang Peng quickly accepted the order and left. Not long after, he brought Hudu, who had a nervous expression on her face, over. Hong Tai-long did not say a word of nonsense. Taking advantage of the fact that Huda's cultivation base was sealed and could not fight back, he went behind Hudu and slapped her head cleanly. Boom! A sound like the collapse of a mountain was heard. Yellow dust was set off and spread out in all directions. Hong Tai-long dispersed the surrounding yellow dust and held a yellow light ball that was wriggling rapidly in his hand. He directly erased the memory of Hudu's primordial spirit. When the yellow light ball stopped wriggling completely, he threw it to Yu Qianqiu. As soon as Yu Qianqiu caught it, he immediately swallowed it into his stomach without hesitation. He quickly closed his eyes and sat cross-legged. As soon as the yellow light ball entered his dantian, a bit of its essence turned into Huda's appearance. His eyes lit up when he saw the yellow crystal bead. He could not wait to grab it and swallow it. His body immediately flashed with light and he sat cross-legged on the spot where the yellow crystal bead used to be. This time, because Yu Qianqiu already had the cultivation base of the small god middle stage, it was not difficult for him to control Huda's cultivation base. Coupled with his previous experience, it could be said that he was very familiar with the process. Hong Tai-long, who was standing below the stage, saw that he did not need any more help and was happy to be at ease, inside the misty palace, when Lanfeng, who was lying on the bed, suddenly opened his eyes. Blue light shot out from his eyes. Under the powerful energy of the blue sea essence, when Lanfeng's injuries were almost healed in a few days. There was no doubt that the blue sea essence was magical. When Lanfeng's body was filled with a large amount of blue sea essence. He did not use the blue sea essence to cleanse his muscles and marrow like others did. Instead, he fused a large amount of blue sea essence with his body without knowing why. It could be said that when Lanfeng now had an immortal body. As long as his consciousness did not collapse, he could be reborn again even if his bones were turned into ashes. This was also the reason why he could resurrect after being killed by the demonic god. Seeing that he had woken up, Lu Yanqing, who had been waiting by his side, immediately hugged him and examined him. After finding that he was fine, she kept muttering to herself, "It's all my fault. It's all my fault. I should not have agreed to let you go out and take risks. Otherwise, you would not have been injured." When Lanfeng's blue eyes looked at her quietly, he reached out and stroked her hair, saying, "I believe you. You're not wrong." Although the words spoken were words of love, the tone was still cold, and there was a faint trace of the charm of metal rubbing against each other. "I can't let you go on like this." Lu Yanqing suddenly got up and looked at him with tears in her eyes. She bit her lip and hesitated for a long time. Then, with a trembling voice, she grabbed his hand and asked, "If I let you disperse the huge energy in your body, would you be willing?" When Lanfeng sat up straight and looked at her quietly with his blue eyes. He nodded and said, "Whatever you say, I'll do it. But at the same time, it will also disperse your cultivation. You've gone through untold hardships to get to where you are today. Are you really willing?" Lu Yanqing's voice trembled. Her hand holding his hand was also trembling. "I believe you." When Lanfeng's tone and expression did not have a trace of hesitation. Large tears fell from Lu Yanqing's eyes. She buried her head and choked for a long time, saying repeatedly, "It's all my fault, don't cry. I don't know why, but seeing you cry makes my heart ache." When Lanfeng held her face with both hands. "No. Even if you blame me for the rest of your life, I can't let you continue like this." Lu Yanqing suddenly grabbed his hands and pulled him with great difficulty. Come with me." The two of them walked out of Misty Palace hand in hand. When someone asked Wen Lanfeng how he was, Lu Yanqing only said that he was fine and wanted to take Wen Lanfeng around. As soon as the two of them left Misty Palace, they flew into the distance, in Utopia's military camp. After Yu Qianqiu fused the two cultivations into his body, Yu Qianqiu checked the situation in his dantian. At that moment, the fire spirit, metal spirit, and earth spirit had returned. He was still missing the wood spirit and water spirit. He did not know how the five spirits would react when they returned. When he slowly opened his eyes and stood up, Hong Tai-long, who was wandering in the military camp square, immediately flashed over. When he realized that he could no longer see through Yu Qianqiu's cultivation, he immediately asked impatiently, "How is it? The difference between each level is indeed huge. After fusing with the earth spirit middle stage cultivation, my current cultivation has only just entered the small god late stage." Although Yu Qianqiu's tone was a little regretful, the excitement on his face was overflowing. "You brat, show off all you want. Other people might not be able to reach this level even after cultivating for many years. You're just showing off after getting the benefits." Hong Tai-long laughed out loud. "Late stage small god. Not bad, not bad. Your cultivation is even higher than mine. This old dragon is so envious. Congratulations, master. Congratulations, master." Zhang Peng also flashed over with an envious expression. Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but chuckle proudly for a while. Suddenly, he spread out his arms, and the yellow dust that filled the sky quickly gathered with the Utopia military camp as the center. Not long later, a khaki-colored earth spirit sculpture stood beside the golden Tai-long sculpture. "I'm still missing the wood spirit and the water spirit. I already know that the wood spirit is Mu Yuanzi, and I still don't know where the water spirit is. Now that I have the capital to refine the earth spirit mystic weapon, Mu Yuanzi will be mine sooner or later. Yu Qianzhou sneered and said, I just don't know what Mu Yuanzi's cultivation is like. I hope he won't disappoint me. Although I haven't seen that Mu Yuanzi before, I reckon that he's at least at the level of a great god. You'll be rich after devouring him. As for the water spirit. Hong Tailong muttered to himself for a while and shook his head slightly. I don't know if there's a water spirit in the lower 3 realms, but I heard that the water god in the god realm is a water spirit. But that woman is one of the ancient gods, and her cultivation is terrifyingly high. I'm afraid it's not very possible for you to devour her. Chapter 1203. The water god of the divine world is the water spirit? She's one of the ancient gods? Yu Qianzhou was startled, and his facial muscles twitched as he said, devouring the ancient gods? I don't have such good teeth. Her cultivation must be at the late ancient god stage, right? To be able to become an ancient god, her cultivation is naturally not simple. Hong Tailong shook his head and said, she definitely has the cultivation of the late ancient god stage. As for whether it is the late ancient god stage, I don't know. What do you mean? Yu Qianzhou was stunned. Zhang Peng, who was at the side, also pricked up his ears to listen carefully. This level of information wasn't something that could be heard at any time. Usually, there wasn't even a place to inquire about it, so he naturally couldn't miss it. Let me explain it to you this way. Hong Tailong pointed to the sky and said, a long time ago, those great ancient gods already had the cultivation of the late ancient god stage. It can be said that they are the first people in this world to have the cultivation of the late ancient god stage. However, there are 2 people with higher cultivation, and they are Great God E and War God. Even my coiling dragon ancestor isn't a match for them. Therefore, I suspect that there is a higher cultivation than the late ancient god stage. The cultivation of Tao is likely to be far beyond the late ancient god stage. Otherwise, how could he suppress the gods? Therefore, I also don't know how high the cultivation of the current water god is. In fact, other than those ancient gods, I reckon that no one knows the cultivation of the ancient gods. You know what I mean, right? Yu Qianzhou silently digested the contents of his words. After a long time, he slowly sighed and said, in that case, the demon god who can defeat the other ancient gods must have a cultivation that is beyond our imagination. To defeat him, even if I can devour the water god, I'm afraid I'm still not a match for him. Cough, cough. Hong Tailong coughed twice and said, you're thinking too far ahead. Against a person at that level, even if you add 100,000 Yu Qianzhou together, it still wouldn't be enough to kill him. Do you think that the person who is known as the Divine Realm's #1 expert is just joking around? Let's not bite off more than we can chew. Let's settle the matter in front of us first. What about that azure sky tree demon? Yu Qianzhou smiled bitterly and waved at Zhang Peng, signaling him to bring Qing Tian over. Zhang Peng accepted the order and left. After a while, Qing Tian followed behind him leisurely. She seemed to have dressed up meticulously. She was wearing a simple dress, but her waist, breasts, and buttocks were all over the place. She was curvaceous and graceful. Her hair was also carefully combed, making her face look very beautiful. However, when the great devil king saw Hudu and Kintai, who were motionless like 2 statues on the square, a trace of panic flashed across her face. However, she still maintained her best state and bowed to Yu Qianzhou. After that, she stood there seductively and looked at Yu Qianzhou affectionately. Every frown and movement of her eyes was very attractive. Yu Qianzhou and Hong Tailong looked at each other in dismay. They knew that this woman was still making her final struggle. She wanted to use the only asset she had to save her life. Yu Qianzhou coughed and said, Qing Tian. It would be a pity to kill such a great beauty like you. Hong Tailong and Zhang Peng immediately looked at him. Their eyes were filled with suspicion. They suspected that he had taken a fancy to her. When the great devil king heard this, her eyes lit up. She immediately twisted her snake-like waist and knelt down. She covered her face and said, I hope that my lord will take pity on me and give me another chance. I will definitely do my best to repay you. I will definitely not disappoint my lord. Her appearance was really pitiful. I also can't bear to kill you. How about this? I will give you another chance. Yu Qianqiu pointed at Hong Tailong and Zhang Peng and said, if you can make one of them fall in love with you, I can be merciful. Ah! Hong Tailong and Zhang Peng cried out at the same time. The great devil king looked left and right, then looked at Yu Qianqiu's serious expression. She then slowly stood up and walked toward Hong Tailong. In the end, Hong Tailong's eyes widened like a bull's eyes. He said sternly, if you dare to come any closer, I will kill you with a single palm strike. The coquettish expression on Qing Tian's face froze. She turned around and weakly walked toward Zhang Peng. She bit her lip and looked like a little wife who had been wronged. However, Zhang Peng was even more direct. He coldly harumphed and said, scram. Qing Tian suddenly didn't know what to do. Her eyes turned as she tried to think of a solution. On the stage, Yu Qianqiu laughed and said, since the two of you don't fancy her, I will reluctantly accept her. As he said this, he had already appeared in front of her and reached out to hug her waist. Joy flashed in the great devil king's eyes. She took the opportunity to lean into his embrace and sob. She sobbed and said, thank you, Lord, for not killing me. However, she didn't know that she had met someone who didn't mean what he said. Yu Qianqiu hugged her and raised his hand to slap her head. A layer of yellow soil quickly wrapped around her. Hong Tailong's and Zhang Peng's expressions twitched. They watched as the clear sky demon king, who was wrapped in yellow soil, slowly shrank. Suddenly, the yellow soil exploded, and a yellow pearl landed in Yu Qianqiu's hand. Yu Qianqiu coldly pinched the bead and looked at it. He said to himself in a low voice, small god middle stage earth soul mystic weapon. He looked like he could kill without batting an eyelid. He casually tossed the bead onto the ground, and it immediately sank. Not long later, the ground trembled, and many large cracks appeared. A mound of earth rose up, and a huge earth person walked out. However, as the earth person's footsteps trembled, there was also the faint sound of thunder. The three of them abruptly raised their heads and looked toward the sky in the distance. Hong Tailong said in astonishment, could it be that the earth soul mystic weapon can communicate with the heaven and earth aspect? Yu Qianqiu frowned and closed his eyes. The various scenes in Utopia flashed through his mind. After locking onto the source of the thunderbolts, Yu Qianqiu suddenly opened his eyes and bellowed furiously, what is that stupid woman doing now? What's going on? Hong Tailong asked, puzzled. Zhang Peng was also at a loss. He didn't know who the stupid woman was. We'll know once we take a look. Yu Qianqiu pointed at the huge earth person, and it immediately sank into the ground. The ground quickly became flat, and a yellow bead landed in his hand. He waved his hand, and the three of them disappeared. When they reappeared, they were already on an island in the Utopia Sea. There were snow-blue thunderbolts crisscrossing in the clear sky. The source of the thunderbolts didn't come from the sky, but from Wen Lanfeng's body. At this moment, Wen Lanfeng was kneeling on the highest peak of the island. His hands were deeply inserted into the soil, and his face was filled with pain. From time to time, he would raise his head and let out an extremely dull, heh-heh sound. The sound was roaring in his throat, but he tried his best not to let it out. He was like a beast that had been inhumanely abused, and he was clearly forcefully suppressing the endless pain to not let out a sound. His face was flushed red, and the veins on his neck were bulging. His lips had been bitten off by himself, and blue blood was dripping down. Under his tattered white robe, his muscles were undulating. It was because he was in too much pain, and his muscles were so tense that they were trembling violently. It was unknown how much pain a person had to endure to torture himself to such a horrifying state. The source of the snow-blue thunderbolts that filled the sky came from Wen Lanfeng, who was kneeling on the ground. Majestic energy was constantly released from his body, turning into thunderbolts that dissipated in the air. The scene was shocking, but it was extremely tragic. At the foot of the mountain, Lu Yanqing also knelt on the ground, looking at Wen Lanfeng, who was in pain on the top of the mountain, crying inconsolably. Her silver teeth had also bitten through her lips, and her lower jaw was dripping with blood. Her fingers were pinched into the flesh of her palms, and blood was dripping between her fingers. The three people who suddenly appeared stood behind Lu Yanqing, and each of them looked at the scene with a moved expression. At a glance, the three of them knew that Wen Lanfeng was dissipating his cultivation. There was nothing crueler than this for cultivators, especially experts who had not obtained their cultivation easily. It was more painful than killing them, and almost no one was willing to do this. The surroundings of the island were stirred up by the release of such a huge amount of energy, and the waves were surging violently. Zhang Peng turned his head to look at his master, who was standing in the wind with a solemn expression. Hong Tailong also suddenly turned his head, looked at Yu Qianqiu, and said in a low voice, "We can't let him continue. His cultivation is very useful to us. I will think of a way to make him stop." Yu Qianqiu, whose green robes fluttered in the wind, suddenly reached out and pressed his hand on Hong Tailong's chest. He shook his head slightly and said, "He has already helped me enough. He even died once for me. I will not force him to do anything else. I cannot rely on others forever. I will do the rest myself. Since it is his own decision, as long as he does not regret it, I have nothing to say." Sigh. What a pity. Hong Tailong stomped his feet and sighed. The gruesome scene lasted for 10 days and 10 nights. Yu Qianqiu and the other two watched silently. Such a huge commotion had attracted the attention of almost everyone in Utopia. When the men and women saw what was happening, they were left speechless. After 10 days and 10 nights, the snow-blue thunderbolt released from Wen Lanfeng's body finally disappeared. It was unimaginable how powerful Wen Lanfeng's cultivation had become after releasing such powerful energy for 10 days and 10 nights in a row. However, Wen Lanfeng finally collapsed powerlessly on the top of the mountain, motionless. Wen Lanfeng! Lu Yanqing shouted at the top of her voice, which had become hoarse from crying. She flashed to the top of the mountain and sat on the ground with the unconscious Wen Lanfeng in her arms, sobbing uncontrollably. Yu Qianqiu slowly let out a breath and flashed to the top of the mountain. The others also followed silently to see what was going on. At this moment, Wen Lanfeng's snow-blue hair had turned black again. His thick snow-blue eyebrows had also returned to black. Red blood flowed out of his bitten lip. The light blue cloud pattern between his eyebrows had also disappeared, and he had returned to his original appearance. His eyes were tightly shut, and his face was deathly pale. Chapter 1204. The wind and clouds in the sky gradually subsided, and the sea calmed down. Yu Qianqiu squatted down and grabbed one of Wen Lanfeng's hands to check. He found that although his body was extremely weak, there was no major problem. He then took out a nourishing elixir and put it into his mouth. He used his powerful cultivation to help him refine and absorb it. Then he helped him quickly straighten out the blood in his body. Not long after, Wen Lanfeng woke up. When Wen Lanfeng opened his eyes and saw Lu Yanqing crying in front of him, a happy smile appeared on his face. He slowly reached out to help her wipe her tears and said softly, "Don't cry, I'm fine." Although his voice was weak, it was much more emotional than the sword devil Wen Lanfeng's words. Everyone also heard some information from his words. They guessed that Wen Lanfeng's memory had really recovered, and he should also remember what happened after he lost his memory. Otherwise, he would not have said that he was fine. "Your cultivation." Lu Yanqing shook her head in pain and cried, "I really don't want to see you muddle along like that again. You. Will you hate me?" Wen Lanfeng struggled to open his arms and held her in his arms. He was weak, but he smiled warmly and said, "Why would I hate you? As long as you don't despise me for being useless. I'm afraid to see your erratic eyes again, Yanqing. I'm so afraid that my life will be out of your eyes." "No. No." Lu Yanqing hugged him tightly and shook her head vigorously. The two of them hugged each other for a long time and did not want to separate. Yu Qianqiu looked at the two of them and smiled bitterly, especially at Wen Lanfeng. He thought to himself that this guy had finally gotten Lu Yanqing. Such a super way of chasing girls was simply shocking. Forgive me for not agreeing. In fact, most women have a natural slave nature in their subconscious. It was really true that men were not bad and women did not love them. But this one Lanfeng simply did not give up until he achieved his goal countless times. Which man could compare with him? Consider yourself ruthless, the two of you have been through the sea. Then live a good life in utopia with peace of mind. After saying that, Yu Qianqiu turned into a stream of light and flew away. The others also sighed and shook their heads as they left one after another. Within Ethereal Palace, Yu Qianqiu was a little anxious. There was no other reason than that Bai Suzhen had requested to head to the Blue Sea Death Trap to search for the Blue Sea Essence after learning that the Fiend Celestial had attacked Yu Qianqiu thrice. If it was in the past, Yu Qianqiu would have agreed, but when Lanfeng was a good example. How could he let her take the risk? No. Absolutely not. Yu Qianqiu shouted at Bai Suzhen in the room and immediately left. As soon as he opened the door, he found that Wu Lixue and Yan Yu were hiding at the door and eavesdropping. He immediately pointed at them and scolded, "What do you two want?" The two girls giggled and turned to leave. Yu Qianqiu couldn't do anything to them. Suddenly, he thought of something and shouted, "Shua, where's your pheasant? How come I haven't seen her for a long time?" When Wu Lixue heard this, she immediately ran back, pulled his arm, and said with an aggrieved expression, "I never found a chance to tell you, but when we were in the Divine Ruin Realm, just a few days before the invasion of the demonic path, little sister Phoenix ran out to play, and then disappeared." Yu Qianqiu was taken aback. "That pheasant is still in the Divine Ruin Realm?" Wu Lixue nodded, hugged his arm and begged, "Can you go to the Divine Ruin Realm and find her?" "I don't have time to find her now. Can't we talk about it later?" Yu Qianqiu smiled bitterly. Wu Lixue obediently said, "Oh." She also knew that it was dangerous outside. Besides, the tragedy in the Divine Ruin Realm was still fresh in her memory. She knew that now was not the time to throw a tantrum. After a conversation, the two women looked behind him with a strange expression and left. Yu Qianqiu didn't need to look back to know who was standing behind him. He turned to the smiling Bai Suzhen and said, "I really can't let you take that risk." Bai Suzhen smiled calmly and said, "Who said I was going to take the risk? When Lanfeng is when Lanfeng. I cultivate the 10,000 Demon Heart Sutra of the ancestor of all demons, Tai Shu Zheng. Tai Shu Zheng and the demon god use the essence of the blue sea to temper their bodies. I will be fine too." The reason why when Lanfeng lost his mind was because he didn't master the method. She gently held his hand and said softly, "Don't worry, I will be fine." Yu Qianqiu pleaded, "It's really not necessary. Even if you succeed, it will be difficult for you to be the opponent of the demon god. Just think about it, Tai Shu Jing was, who said I must fight with the demon god? I also want to improve my cultivation." Bai Suzhen smiled. Yu Qianqiu knew that she didn't mean what she said. She must want to improve her cultivation as soon as possible so that she could help him. But how could he resist her repeated requests? In the end, he reluctantly agreed. On the island in the central hinterland of the Blue Sea Dead Realm, after Yu Qianqiu and Bai Suzhen appeared, they first went to the cave in the valley. After worshipping Li Duxing's body, Yu Qianqiu sealed the cave. The two flew to the seaside according to the direction of the 10,000 Demon Heart Sutra. Unexpectedly, when they approached the seaside, they saw someone they didn't want to see. Demon King of Three Nights was standing alone on the reef by the seaside. The two were slightly shocked. Demon King of Three Nights seemed to have heard the commotion. He suddenly turned around and saw the two of them. His pupils shrank, and he said sternly, "Yu Qianqiu." Almost at the same time, he flung out the scarlet cloak on his shoulder without hesitation. It turned into a blood curtain and instantly enveloped the entire island. Obviously, he wanted to cut off Yu Qianqiu's escape route and kill him. Although Demon King of Three Nights' demonic technique was amazing, he underestimated the teleportation ability of Yu Qianqiu's star bead. After Yu Qianqiu sent Bai Suzhen back to Utopia, a ferocious glint appeared in his eyes. He actually wanted to fight Demon King of Three Knights. At the same time he threw out a yellow bead. Yu Qianzhou shouted angrily, "Demon King of Three Knights. Today will be the day you die." The sky-splitting arrow shot out with a whoosh, exploding with boundless golden light. It was like a torrential rain of pear blossoms in the sky. An incomparably majestic aura spread out, and with a boom, the blood curtain that trapped the entire island was directly shattered by the 10,000 divine swords. Demon King of Three Knights immediately felt that something was wrong. He quickly sized up Yu Qianzhou and couldn't help but exclaim, "Your cultivation has reached the minor god late stage? How is that possible? Let's see if I can kill you." Yu Qianzhou laughed sinisterly. The 10,000 divine swords that exploded the blood curtain were like a meteor shower that shot towards Demon King of Three Knights from all directions. Demonic light glimpse. A red light flashed in Demon King of Three Knights' eyes, and he passed through the sword rain at an unbelievable speed. He raised his sky demon fist and was about to strike out, but suddenly, two large hands appeared from the ground below and grabbed him, preventing him from continuing forward. Absorbing Star's great technique. Yu Qianzhou's two palms struck out at him. He wanted to see how powerful the Absorbing Star's great technique was with his current cultivation. Demon King of Three Knights immediately felt that the water in his body was rapidly depleting, and he shouted angrily, "Raging Flame Devil Aura." Black devil flames burst out and quickly enveloped his entire body, completely blocking the Absorbing Star's great technique's power. The two large hands that grabbed him were also shattered into dust by the black devil flames. Demon King of Three Knights' sky demon fist smashed into the ground, and with a bang, the entire island shook. The Earth's soul mystic weapon underground was immediately shattered into dust, and there was almost no abnormality on the surface. The power was almost all concentrated on the Earth's soul mystic weapon. However, with this delay, he was immediately trapped by the tens of thousands of divine swords. In the moment of danger, Demon King of Three Knights clapped his palms, and used the demonic charm Doppelganger. His body turned into dozens of gray shadows, and like wisps of green smoke, he nimbly swam through the swords. The dozens of gray shadows converged in the air, and once again formed Demon King of Three Knights. He flew a bit too high, and the moment he appeared, he was forced into a fluster by a few fatal beams of light from the blue sea. Below, Yu Qianzhou's head was an arc of tens of thousands of flying swords, waiting for the enemy, ready to shoot at him at any time. Arrogant. Demon King Three Knights let out a deafening roar. It was a great humiliation for him to be forced into a fluster by someone whose cultivation was lower than his. It was not that he could not defeat Yu Qianzhou. If it were not for the fact that he was afraid of those invincible divine swords, he was confident that he could kill Yu Qianzhou in a single move. Following an angry roar, a huge fist carrying the power of thunder smashed down from the sky. It could easily turn the entire island into dust. Before the heavy fist even landed, Yu Qianzhou was already a bit unsteady from the pressure coming down from above. He finally realized that he was a bit too arrogant, and the difference between them was still very large. He gritted his teeth and yelled, 10,000 swords as one. The tens of thousands of rays of light quickly formed the heaven and earth splitting arrow. The golden light exploded against the strong wind, and the huge heaven and earth splitting arrow shot towards the fist shadow. With a bang, the fist shadow was instantly disintegrated by the sharp arrow, and the 100-meter-long heaven and earth splitting arrow was also sent spinning by the powerful force and stabbed into the sea. Rumble. The trees on the island were smashed into dust by the remaining power of the fist. Countless rocks collapsed in an instant, and Yu Qianzhou was also nailed into the ground. His waist was deeply sunk into the ground, and his head was shaken to the point of being dazed. Demon King of Three Knights quickly licked the blood that seeped out from the wound made by the divine arrow. He risked being injured to test the depth of Yu Qianzhou's strength, and discovered that it was only so-so. He revealed a ferocious expression and was about to fight again when his gaze suddenly caught sight of a person with a dull expression on the blue sea surface. It was Yan Zhuixing, who had once again used the blue sea essence to refine his body. Yu Qianzhou shook his dazed head, and his expression froze. He also discovered Yan Juexing, and his eyes immediately lit up. He immediately jumped out of the ground and yelled, "Kill him!" The Earth Soul profound weapon that was condensed underground broke out of the ground and directly pounced at Yan Juexing. Demon King of Three Knights was greatly alarmed. He didn't think that Yu Qianqiu would have a helper. He teleported over to rescue him, and the heaven and earth splitting arrow that was stabbed into the sea suddenly turned into tens of thousands of golden rays that shot out like a torrential rain. Chapter 1205. Three knights had already risked injury to test out Yu Qianqiu's depth. At this critical moment, he ignored the 10,000 divine swords. In order to save the muddle-headed Yan Juexing, he threw caution to the wind and slapped the Earth Soul profound weapon that was attacking Yan Juexing with a shocking palm. As for the Earthen Soul profound soldier, it did not know what danger was. After receiving Yu Qianqiu's instructions, it also threw caution to the wind and did not care about anything else. It allowed Demon King Three Knights' palm strike to come at it with a force that could topple a mountain. It was willing to sacrifice its body to take Yan Juexing's life. In the end, with a hong sound, it was really smashed into pieces by Demon King Three Knights' palm strike. A yellow bead fell into the sea. The 10,000 divine swords had already arrived. Demon Monarch Three Knight had killed the Earth Soul profound soldier with a single palm strike. While still in the air, he flipped his body and swept his palm across the surface of the sea. Instantly, a huge wave surged towards the 10,000 divine swords that were shooting over. A huge wave instantly knocked the divine swords flying over. Yu Qianqiu and Yan Juexing were both people who would kill each other the moment they saw each other. How could they let Three Knights save them so easily? Demon Monarch Three Knights was just about to open his claw and pull Yan Juexing away from the surface of the sea when suddenly, the huge wave created by his palm was pushed back by Yu Qianqiu using all of his cultivation to use the water art. 10,000 golden lights pierced through the blue wave and attacked again. At the same time, Yu Qianqiu shot out like a shooting star from the whirlpool that had suddenly formed in the green wave. In that instant, he ignited the little remaining true samadhi fire in his body and casually grabbed a divine sword beside him. As he raised the sword and slashed, the divine sword suddenly became a huge sword that was 100 meters long. The true samadhi fire covered the sword and he slashed at Demon King Three Knights. Yu Qianqiu threw caution to the wind and fought with all his might. However, Demon King Three Knights was not someone to be trifled with. With a wave of his hand, the raging inferno devil aura that covered his entire body rushed out like a black whirlwind, directly blocking the godly sword that was slashing down. The black whirlwind sucked in the godly sword, and Demon King Three Knights casually swung it. Yu Qianqiu's cultivation was inferior to his, so the godly sword was directly pulled out of his hand. Under the corrosion of the true samadhi fire, the raging flames devil aura was already quickly dispersing. However, Demon King Three Knight did not give up on the opportunity to use it. His arm that was controlling the raging flames devil aura spun rapidly, turning the godly swords that he had snatched into a fan. Hong hong hong, he directly sent the 10,000 godly swords flying. Just from this, it could be seen that Demon King Three Knights was much stronger than Yu Qianqiu. As for Yu Qianqiu, who was in a killing frenzy, he would not stop until he won or lost. With a cry, he raised his arms to the sky and roared angrily. As he raised his arms to the sky, the waves in the vast blue sea suddenly rose 1,000 meters high, directly swallowing the two of them. Demon King Three Knights was greatly alarmed. He did not expect Yu Qianqiu to have such a powerful water control technique. Seeing that he could no longer see Yan Juexing, he immediately used his steel-like divine sense to sweep across the vast blue waves. However, he discovered that another Earth Soul mystic soldier had rushed out from the mud at the bottom of the sea. It grabbed the muddle-headed Yan Juexing's thigh and directly dragged him to the bottom of the sea. Demon King Three Knights waved his hand, and the godly swords pulled by the raging inferno devil aura pierced through the huge waves and shot towards the Earth Soul mystic soldier at the bottom of the sea. Almost at the same time, Yu Qianqiu clenched his fists with a sinister expression. The raging waves from the vast blue sea instantly froze everything within 1,000 kilometers. From time to time, a fatal beam of light would shoot out from the bottom of the sea, dyeing the huge layer of ice blue. Although this temporarily stopped Demon King Three Knights' actions, it did not stop the true Samadhi fire sword from effortlessly breaking through the ice. As a result, the sword directly nailed the Earth's soul mystic soldier to the bottom of the sea. The true Samadhi fire was not afraid of seawater at all. In an instant, the Earth's soul mystic soldier was turned into ashes. This time, it was completely destroyed. Yu Qianqiu passed through the ice without any obstruction and grabbed towards Yan Juexing. At this moment, the devil blade suddenly flashed out of Yan Juexing's storage bracelet and automatically saved its owner. Yu Qianqiu conveniently picked up the sword that was nailed to the bottom of the sea. With a boom, he directly sent the uncontrolled devil blade flying. You dare! At the same time Demon King Three Knights roared angrily, the demonic aura around his body surged. He waved his arms, and the frozen sea shattered with a rumble. Countless huge chunks of ice flew into the sky. However, at this moment, Yu Qianqiu had already grabbed Yan Juexing's hair with a sinister smile on his face. He quickly sealed Yan Juexing's cultivation and placed the sword on Yan Juexing's neck. The true Samadhi fire on the sword had already wrapped Yan Juexing up. However, he controlled it very well and did not do anything to Yan Juexing. Demon King Three Knights, who had just entered the sea, immediately held back and shouted angrily, Yu Qianqiu. What do you want? Yu Qianqiu grabbed Yan Juexing's hair and directly flew out of the sea. He stood on a huge piece of ice floating on the surface of the sea. Demon King Three Knights also flew out of the sea and landed on a piece of ice less than 10 meters away from Yu Qianqiu. However, with the sword on Yan Juexing's neck and the true Samadhi fire covering his body, Demon King Three Knights completely cut off any thoughts of rescuing him. Yu Qianqiu. As long as you let him go, we can discuss any conditions. Demon King Three Knights stared at Yu Qianqiu in embarrassment and anger. The disdainful aura on his face had already disappeared. He had nowhere to vent his anger. Never in his dreams did he expect Yu Qianqiu to capture Yan Juexing right under his nose. This was a huge humiliation to him. However, he had to admit that he had indeed underestimated Yu Qianqiu today. He had never formally fought against Yu Qianqiu before. He had never expected that when they actually fought, Yu Qianqiu would actually hide his abilities and catch him off guard time and time again. He had already come to a conclusion in his heart. If he didn't get rid of Yu Qianqiu soon, once his cultivation increased, Yu Qianqiu would become a great threat to him. So the famous Demon King Three Knights is only a so-so. Yu Qianqiu stared at Demon King Three Knights, who was afraid of harming Yan Juexing, with a mocking expression. He then looked at Yan Juexing, who was in his hands, and suddenly couldn't help but laugh wildly. A few fatal beams of light shot out from under his feet, but he didn't dodge at all. He continued to stand on the floating ice and laugh wildly, causing the floating ice around him to tremble. Demon King Three Knights' facial muscles twitched violently. Such mockery was like a slap to his face. How many years had it been? When had he ever been treated like this? Right now, he wanted nothing more than to rush up and smash Yu Qianqiu into smithereens. However, the chips were in his opponent's hands, so it was no longer up to him. From the start of the fierce battle, it seemed like it took a long time, but in reality, it happened very quickly. It only took a few sips of tea, but every step was frightening. Victory or defeat was decided by a single thought. Yu Qianqiu didn't win because of his cultivation, but because he won by surprise, catching Demon King Three Knights off guard. However, to dare to face the Demon Lord Three Knights head-on like this, no matter who saw it, they would have to praise his courage and strategy without any words to describe it. At this moment, the demon blade flashed out of the sea, floating in the air not far away, waiting for an opportunity to swim. It was indeed a divine weapon full of spiritual energy. It actually knew that its master had fallen into someone else's hands, so it didn't dare to act rashly. And Yu Qianqiu, who was laughing so hard that he was almost out of breath, also stopped laughing. He summoned back the 10,000 divine swords to protect himself, then grabbed Yan Juexing's head and twisted it around. He sneered and said, "Yan Juexing, You and I have fought for so many years. So what if you have the entire demonic path protecting you? So what if you have the demon god protecting you? In the end, you still fell into this old man's hands. Demon King 3 Knights immediately became nervous. If something happened to Yan Juexing, he wouldn't be able to answer to the demon god. He waved his hand and shouted again, Yu Qianqiu. Don't be rash, we can discuss any condition. We can really discuss any condition? Yu Qianqiu's gaze turned cold as he suddenly tilted his head. Of course. Demon King 3 Knights was afraid that he would act rashly, so he comforted him. I believe you know the strength of my demonic path. As long as you let him go, my demonic path can help you unify the 3 realms and let you ascend to the throne of the 3 realm supreme ruler. If you don't feel at ease, the heroes of my demonic path can return to the demon world and be sealed there by you. What do you think? Bullshit. Don't give me that. You killed so many of my subordinates, and now you're talking to me about this. Yu Qianqiu cursed. He pointed his divine sword at Demon King 3 Knights and said sternly, Didn't you say we can discuss any condition? Fine. I, your father, want to exchange a life for a life. As long as you, San Yi, commit suicide in front of me, your father's words are as solid as a nail. After you die, I will definitely let him live. Don't say that I didn't give you a chance to negotiate. Do you dare to agree? Yu Qianqiu. Don't go too far. Demon King 3 Knights said with a gloomy expression. How could he believe such nonsense? If he died, Yan Juexing would have no chance of survival. Then what do you want me to discuss with you? Yu Qianqiu waved his divine sword, and Yan Juexing's arm fell onto the ice with a spurt of blood. He asked sternly again, Commit suicide. You. Demon King 3 Knights was enraged. He suddenly raised his head to look at the sky with a bewildered expression. Yu Qianqiu thought he was up to something, but he suddenly felt an ancient and terrifying aura descend from the sky. This wasn't the first time he had come into contact with such a terrifying aura. 2 words immediately appeared in his mind. Demon God. Yu Qianqiu's heart trembled, and he also abruptly raised his head to look up, only to see that in the sky, a pair of dreamlike gigantic demonic eyes had appeared in the distant space-time, looking down coldly and emotionlessly, as if all living beings in the world were ants in his eyes. F***CK. This bastard is here again. Yu Qianqiu instantly hesitated. Under the gaze of this pair of devil eyes, he didn't know what to do. He didn't know if he should kill Yan Juexing or not. If he angered the number 1 expert in the divine world and he wanted to take revenge, it would be impossible for him to hide. It could be said that there was no way out. Even if he hid in Utopia, Yan Juexing could directly tear through the void and arrive in an instant. He could destroy him with a single finger. But at this moment, something strange happened. The floating demon blade that was waiting for an opportunity suddenly turned into a stream of light and shot into the sky. In between the eyebrows of the giant demon eye in the sky, a crack suddenly appeared, and the demon blade directly entered the crack in the void. Following that, the giant demon eye glanced coldly at Yu Qianqiu and disappeared without a trace. The terrifying aura also disappeared. Chapter 1206. What was the meaning of this? Yu Qianqiu and Demon Lord 3 Knights had the same question in their minds. The 2 of them waited there silently for a while. After there was no movement in the air for a while, the 2 of them gradually came to a realization. The demonic god had taken back the demonic blade he had bestowed to Yan Juexing. The 2 of them were intelligent people. It was not hard to guess the demonic god's intentions. He had clearly given up on protecting Yan Juexing. Yu Qianqiu looked at Yan Juexing, who had landed in his hands, and his expression twitched. A fierce look flashed in Demon Lord 3 Knights' eyes. Just as he moved down from the air, Yu Qianqiu ran faster than a rabbit, disappearing with his belongings. Demon Lord 3 Knights' lungs nearly exploded from anger. He immediately roared at the sky, but before he could vent his anger, he was interrupted by a few fatal beams of light, in the courtyard of Ethereal Palace, by Suzhen, who had been sent back in advance, was extremely anxious. Hong Tai-long and the rest asked about the situation and found out that Yu Qianqiu and Demon Lord 3 knights had clashed. They were also extremely worried. Just as everyone was at a loss, Yu Qianqiu suddenly appeared in front of everyone. Everyone took a closer look and found out that he was fine. They immediately heaved a sigh of relief. When they saw the person he had captured, they were all pleasantly surprised. After Hong Tai-long found out what was going on, he laughed out loud on the spot and said, "Great. You actually managed to capture this guy right under Demon Lord 3 Knights' nose. Demon Lord 3 Knights will definitely be angered to death. Impressive. Truly impressive. How are you going to deal with this guy?" He pointed at Yan Zhuixing. "I heard that there is a cycle of karma. I don't want to make another mortal enemy in my next life and let this bastard have it easy." Yu Qianqiu stared at Yan Zhuixing and said with a sneer, "Yan Zhuixing. From today onwards, the grudge between us shall be written off." Just as he said that, the true samadhi fire that enveloped Yan Zhuixing immediately burned fiercely. In just a moment, Yan Zhuixing's body and soul were burned to ashes. Even his hope of reincarnation was completely extinguished. Yan Zhuixing died in a daze and didn't even know how he died. This was probably the best ending for him. Many people present knew that Yan Zhuixing was Yu Qianqiu's mortal enemy. Seeing Yu Qianqiu kill his enemy, everyone was happy for him. However, Yu Qianqiu, who should have been the happiest, didn't look happy at all. After seeing Yan Zhuixing turn into ashes, he, who had retracted his samadhi true fire, had a cold expression. He knew that if the god fiend had not given up on protecting Yan Zhuixing, he would not have been able to do anything to Yan Zhuixing. That was not the most important thing. In fact, he had already offended the devil god. He did not know if that madman would take revenge on him. Just thinking about it made his scalp tingle. Everyone saw that he didn't look too good and didn't know what was wrong. Yu Qianqiu let out a breath and walked to Bai Suzhen's side. He smiled bitterly and said, "I don't know how the situation in the Blue Sea death trap is now. I'm afraid you'll have to postpone your matter for the time being." Bai Suzhen didn't force it and nodded in understanding. Yu Qianqiu turned to look at Hong Tai-long and said, "Bring Shenyu along." When Hong Tai-long heard this, he immediately knew where Yu Qianqiu wanted to go. He left excitedly. Not long after, he dragged the innocent-looking Shenyu out of the ethereal palace. Yu Qianqiu exchanged greetings with everyone. With a wave of his hand, the three of them disappeared before everyone's eyes. After crossing the ice-cold Netherworld River and stepping into the All-Heavens boundary, Shenyu was sent back to Utopia. Looking at the gigantic moon in the sky, the two of them discussed for a while and immediately flew along the Hengduan mountain range at the edge of the All-Heavens boundary. They wanted to see if Bai Changchun was still cultivating at the same place. When they arrived there, they met the three tomb keepers who had been waiting for Bai Changchun back then. When the three of them saw Hong Tai-long, they greeted him respectfully. Hong Tai-long asked if Bai Changchun had come out yet, and the three of them asked curiously, saying that Bai Changchun had not come out even once. Furthermore, there had been some strange phenomena, causing them to be very worried. When Yu Qianqiu heard that, he looked into the All-Heavens boundary and was also shocked. He saw 4 Bai Changchun floating in the darkness. Their eyes were closed and their ears were covered. They floated there motionlessly. The 4 serene Bai Changchun looked exactly the same. There were golden arcs of light constantly surging in and out of their bodies. They appeared very mysterious and magical in the darkness. "How can this be?" Yu Qianqiu said in shock. This. Hong Tai-long was also shocked. He said with a dumbfounded expression, "Could he have cultivated to the external embodiment realm?" "That's right. This is also what we are worried about." One of the tomb guards pointed at the 4 Bai Changchun in the darkness and said, "At first, there were only 2, then 1 after another, until now there are 4. If it is really the legendary external embodiment realm, then his cultivation progress is too terrifying. At this speed, I'm afraid it won't take too long for him to cultivate to the realm of 10 embodiments. If he cultivates to the legendary realm of transforming into 10 suns in one rage, it will be too terrifying. At that time, who in the mausoleum of the god of sin can stop him? Another tomb guard shook his head and muttered, maybe it's just an illusion. How can a person's cultivation progress be so fast? What is the external embodiment realm? Yu Qianqiu asked in confusion. He had heard about the realm of transforming into 10 suns in one rage from the great god Yi, but he really didn't know what was going on. When the three people heard him ask such a question, they couldn't help but look him up and down in confusion, as if wondering why he had never heard of this before. Hong Tailong looked at Bai Changchun in the darkness and swallowed his saliva. Then, he smiled bitterly to Yu Qianqiu and said, the most obvious characteristic of reaching the ancient god realm is to cultivate each of the 3 souls and 7 spirits in the body to the same level as the cultivator, so that they can be summoned to help at any time during a battle. Early stage ancient god realm can have 3 incarnations, middle stage ancient god realm can have 6 incarnations, and late stage ancient god realm can have 9 incarnations. Once one cultivates to the realm of 10 incarnations, that is the realm of great perfection. I don't know what cultivation should be called. As for the realm of transforming into 10 suns in one rage, it's even more beyond our imagination. According to the legends, only the war god and Ishan fought each other. I haven't seen it, so I can't describe it. Yu Qianqiu was instantly speechless. He looked at the 4 by Changchun with a dull expression, and his heart was fiercely shocked. Originally, he thought that the speed of his cultivation was fast enough, and he was prepared to show off to old man Bai. Who would have thought that the old man was even more terrifying and had actually reached the realm of external embodiment realm? Then, wouldn't his cultivation have already stepped into the ancient god realm? Others might not understand Bai Changchun, but how could he not? He knew that Bai Changchun wouldn't create the so-called illusion as a gimmick, and it might be real. Damn it. This old man's cultivation speed is even more monstrous than monstrous geniuses. He's simply a super monstrous genius. Yu Qianqiu cursed inwardly. He realized that he really couldn't compare himself with this person, otherwise, he would really be infuriated. He forcefully seized someone else's cultivation and fused it for his own use. His cultivation speed was already fast enough, but compared to the old man's rapid cultivation speed, it really paled in comparison. Yu Qianqiu. Is your master joking, or is he serious? Don't scare me. Hong Tailong's voice sounded in his ears. It should be fake. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and replied secretly, forget it. Let's go about our business. Hong Tailong immediately coughed, and pretended to remind the 3 of them to continue to keep a close watch on Bai Changchun. After that, he flew away with Yu Qianqiu. After they were far away from the 3's line of sight, Hong Tailong began to ask seriously, what are you going to do? With our cultivation, if we forcefully do it, it will be very difficult for us to succeed if we encounter a tough opponent. Moreover, once we alert the enemy, it will be troublesome to do it again in the future. I've already thought of a way before I came. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come here so easily. Yu Qianqiu looked around, and after confirming that there was no one around, he transmitted his voice. I see that your identity as the Dragon Clan's envoy is quite useful. How about this, we split up? Once we find the target, you should be able to use your identity as the Dragon Clan's envoy to deceive the tomb guards. After you deceive them, you should be able to use your identity as the Dragon Clan's envoy to deceive the tomb guards. After you deceive them, you can immediately transmit a message to me, and I will rob the tomb at the fastest speed possible. This way, no one will know. Ah! Hong Tailong turned pale with fright. How can we do that? Once this matter spreads out, where will our Dragon Clan put our face? This matter will incur the wrath of the masses in the immortal realm. If the old ancestor finds out, he will definitely not forgive me. Damn it! What are you shouting for? Are you afraid that others won't know? Yu Qianqiu punched him, and Hong Tailong knew that he had misspoken. He immediately fell silent and looked around vigilantly. Yu Qianqiu moved closer and transmitted his voice in a low voice. You are usually a quick-witted dragon. Why are you acting like a fool now? If we rob the tomb openly, won't your identity as a dragon clan member be exposed? Furthermore, it will be exposed even faster. Listen to me. You just have to be careful and lure them away. With the miraculous effects of my earth art, we can secretly rob the tomb. Who will be able to tell? Actually, this is the safest method. Even if someone finds out that the tomb is empty in the future, who would dare to frame the dragon clan without any evidence? Besides, even if old ancestor Coiling Dragon finds out, don't you still have me? What are you afraid of? This. Hong Tailong asked doubtfully, are you serious? If the old ancestor really finds out, don't go back on your word. Damn you. Yu Qianqiu, mean what I say. Before Yu Qianqiu could finish speaking, Hong Tailong immediately came to his senses. He felt like he had almost fallen into a trap. He waved his hands in horror and said, don't even think about it. I won't do it even if you beat me to death. Yu Qianqiu immediately realized that there was a problem with the way he spoke. The words mean what I say means what I say should not be repeated multiple times in front of the same person. This was the golden rule. Hence, his face instantly darkened. He grabbed Hong Tailong and said, I say, are you stupid? Why didn't you think about it? Old ancestor Coiling Dragon is not picky with so many people. Why did he choose you to carry out this mission? Isn't it because you are flexible? Besides, I came to rob the tomb this time to refine a few more Earth Soul mystic weapons and settle the score with Mu Yuanzi. Don't forget, if it wasn't for Mu Yuanzi secretly instructing Jin Tai to obtain the soul-transforming smoke, your old friend Yi Tiankong wouldn't have died to the soul-transforming smoke and you wouldn't have been trapped for 100,000 years. This is also revenge for you. Don't take my kindness for granted. Are you doing it or not? Chapter 1207. Goading Hong Tailong, who had done many bad things in the past, had no effect on him. However, when it came to revenge, Hong Tailong's expression turned ugly. After all, being trapped for 100,000 years wasn't a good memory. Indeed, we can't let that old thing get away with it. How many tragedies in the three realms are caused by that old thing hiding behind the scenes? Why do we have to live and die while he enjoys his life as if nothing happened? Hong Tailong gritted his teeth and said hatefully, this old dragon will make him pay no matter what. This was equivalent to a promise. Yu Qianqiu patted his shoulder with great relief and said, that's right. You're not a gentleman if you don't take revenge. This is how Hong Tailong should be. Hong Tailong rolled his eyes and said snappily, don't be sarcastic. After taking care of that old thing, you're still the one who benefits the most. You can't say that. Yu Qianqiu said sternly, do you think it's easy for me to fight with my life on the line? At the end of the day, I'm still selling my life for your dragon race. Do you think I like living a life of licking blood on the edge of a knife? If I don't improve my cultivation, how can I fulfill the mission of your dragon race's old ancestor Coiling Dragon to administer punishment on behalf of heaven? Seeing that he brought up the matter of administering punishment on behalf of heaven, Hong Tailong had nothing else to say. The two discussed the details together and left one after the other. Under the bright moonlight, the two looked at each other from afar. They wandered around the mausoleum of the god of divinity like wandering gods at night, looking for a suitable target. After half a day, Hong Tailong suddenly landed from the sky. Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up and he quickly landed to hide his tracks. He hid behind a rock and observed with his eyes, waiting for news from the front. Not long after, he saw two streams of light flying away in the distance. Hong Tailong's voice transmission followed, this is the tomb of the virtuous heavenly monarch. He also has the cultivation of a late-stage great god. You better be quick. If I take too long, I'll arouse suspicion. Got it. Yu Qianqiu leapt out from the rock and flew close to the ground under the cover of the terrain. When he saw the blood jade red crystal tomb, he immediately drilled into the ground and used the earth escape technique to enter the tomb. The situation in the grave was exactly the same as that in Honghua Star Lord's grave. A man was lying on the blood jade crystal bed as if he was asleep. Strands of red light seeped through the blood jade red crystals on the dome and concentrated on the body. Although the scene looked strange, it was not the first time that Yu Qianqiu had encountered it. He was already immune to it. Yu Qianqiu couldn't tell if the other party's cultivation was really at the late-stage great god. He took a closer look and imitated Hong Tailong's method. He touched the corpse of the virtuous heavenly monarch with both hands and used his divine sense to check at close range. As a result, he found that the cultivation of the virtuous heavenly monarch was only at the mid-stage great god. It was the same as Honghua Star Lord. This caused Yu Qianqiu, who had repeatedly touched the corpse to examine it, to fall into deep thought. He reckoned that after a person died in battle, their cultivation base would be somewhat damaged. It was impossible for their cultivation base to remain intact like it was when they were healthy. He didn't dare to waste too much time. He clawed at the corpse with his 5 claws. A thin yellow earth armor wrapped the corpse of the virtuous heavenly monarch. It gradually shrank as it squirmed. After a while, the fused earth ball exploded, and a yellow bead fell into his hand. After getting his hands on the item, Yu Qianqiu immediately drilled out of the bright red tomb space. After escaping through the earth, he transmitted his voice to Hong Tailong, "I got it. I'll wait for you at the front." The process could be said to be extremely smooth. Not long after, Hong Tailong flashed over. He couldn't wait to inspect his spoils of war. Yu Qianqiu waved the earth soul in his hand proudly and said, "It's done. I told you it's very safe this way." Hong Tailong snatched the earth's soul and weighed it in his hand. He nodded repeatedly while clicking his tongue. However, Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but ask curiously, "What reason did you use to lure the tomb guardian away?" "I used the excuse of inquiring about your master's background. I didn't expect that the other party would really hate your master so much. He could be said to be very cooperative." Hong Tailong returned the earth soul to him disapprovingly. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. After thinking about it, he didn't think much of it. This was indeed a good reason. Hong Tailong seemed to be very addicted to doing this kind of thing. He rubbed his hands excitedly and said, "I also asked him about the nearby situation. There are still a few tombs nearby. Let's hurry." Yu Qianqiu naturally didn't have any objections. The two of them immediately acted according to the old rules and quickly left one after the other. The two of them busied themselves non-stop for a month. Hong Tailong's identity as the Dragon Clan's emissary was very useful. There was basically no trouble at all. At most, some people didn't treat their guests very warmly. However, they were still quite cooperative. The two of them spent most of their time running around on the road. If they continued like this, the news of the Dragon Clan's emissary arriving at the mausoleum of the gods' mausoleum would probably spread everywhere. However, Yu Qianqiu never showed his face. This made Hong Tailong very depressed. He was more or less worried that things would get out of hand if things got out of hand. However, Yu Qianqiu took out a pile of spoils of war and told him that since they had already done it, there was no point in stopping now. Since that was the case, they should just continue. After checking the spoils of war, there were 80 earth souls, 10 fire souls, and 10 gold souls. There were 16 late-stage Great God Realm, 30 mid-stage Great God Realm, and 54 early-stage Great God Realm. The 16 late-stage Great God Realm Earth Soul Bandits were all early-stage Ancient God Realm tombs. Unfortunately, their cultivation was not completely preserved after they died, and all of them had dropped by 1 level. As for the minor God Realm tombs, the two of them had no interest in wasting time. In any case, there were still many great tombs waiting for them. Moreover, it wouldn't be worth it if they failed miserably for the sake of minor God Realm tombs. In a month's time, they had raided exactly 100 tombs. Hong Tailong held a large pile of weapon souls in his hands and said cheerfully, "With so many helpers, I reckon there shouldn't be a problem sweeping through the 3 realms. Should we go and settle the score with Mu Yuanzi now? We have a strong army and strong horses." Yu Qianqiu sighed ruefully as he put away the weapon souls in his hands. After pondering for a while, he said, "I don't have enough true Samadhi fire. This thing will probably have a great restraining effect on Mu Yuanzi. To be on the safe side, I'll have to refine some true samadhi fire first, just in case. Hong Tailong didn't have any objections. The two of them made a sign that the tomb raiding mission was temporarily suspended. They were prepared to continue the next time they came here, so that they wouldn't have to waste time. After that, the two of them disappeared from the mausoleum of the god of sin. Their first stop was the human world that was sealed. They went to the underground where Hong Tailong was trapped and collected enough green fire. After that, they directly rushed to the fairy realm and openly killed their way to the other human world. This was something that couldn't be helped. The passageway to the netherworld in the demon realm had already disappeared, and even the netherworld flames were nowhere to be seen. If they wanted to collect black fire, they could only go to the other human realm. As a result, Demon King 3 knights chased after them. However, by the time he arrived, Yu Qianqiu had already absorbed all the black fire and left first. It wasn't that Yu Qianqiu wanted to avoid him, nor was it because he was afraid of him. Now that Yu Qianqiu had over 100 divine-grade mystic weapons in his hands, there was no need for him to be afraid of him. Instead, he was eager to devour Mu Yuanzi to raise his cultivation. As for Demon King 3 knights, he was prepared to turn around and eliminate him along with the Devil Dao. After collecting enough blue fire and black light, he used the fire art to absorb a large amount of purple fire from the immortal realm. In Utopia's military camp, Yu Qianqiu, who had refined enough true samadhi fire, waved his hand and pointed to the distant horizon in high spirits. Let's go. We'll settle the score with Mu Yuanzi first. Bastard. It's time to take revenge for the millions of cultivators in the human realm. Let's go. Hong Tailong rubbed his palms together and agreed loudly. The two of them disappeared from Utopia. When they reappeared, they were in an ancient forest not far from the ancient language tree. Hong Tailong looked around and said with a little surprise, "This seems to be an ancient forest. Didn't you say that you could directly teleport to Mu Yuanzi's Woodkiller Sea? Why did you come here?" Yu Qianqiu's gaze landed on the golden ancient language tree. In his mind, he thought of the adorable Lu heir in the Woodkiller Sea. He shook his head and sighed. "Unless it's absolutely necessary, I really don't want to kill her grandfather in front of her." "Then, who is she?" Hong Tailong asked doubtfully. His intuition told him that it was definitely a woman. Yu Qianqiu didn't want to linger on this topic. He observed the surrounding terrain for a while, then released 10 gold souls and 10 earth souls, sinking them into the hard red rocks in pairs. The two types of soldier souls couldn't be used in the rocks alone and could only be used together. Among the gold souls, there were 2 late-stage great gods. He then flashed to the cliff and scattered 20 earth souls into the soil to set up an ambush. He then flew to the forest in all directions and took out the remaining 50 earth souls, setting them up in the surroundings to set up an ambush, forming a huge encirclement. As for the fire soul mystic weapons, there were no conditions for them to be used here. However, there were already 2 late-stage great gods with samadhi true fire mystic weapons on standby in Utopia. Fang Xingjian summoned them as well. Using both the gold arts and earth arts, he got the 2 fire soul mystic weapons to set up an ambush under the red rocks not far away from the ancient language tree. An ambush set up by 92 divine level experts. Hong Tailong rubbed his hands together excitedly and cackled. Let's see where Mu Yuanzi can escape to. There should be 93 of them. Yu Qianqiu pointed at him, then pointed at the flowing river and said, "Hide in the water and wait for an opportunity." Hong Tailong was stunned for a moment and said, "Isn't this making a mountain out of a molehill?" Although he said this, he still turned and walked to the river. He jumped in and hid at the bottom of the quietly flowing river. With everything prepared, Yu Qianqiu squeezed the heaven-splitting arrow in his sleeves and let out a cold laugh. Mu Yuanzi. Today, you, the local tyrant who has been hiding behind the 3 realms, has met your end. Fang Xingjian then walked up to the ancient language tree. Following the method Jintai had told him to contact Mu Yuanzi for 3 nights, he slapped down on the ancient language tree. Dull thumping sounds rang out, and the entire ancient language tree started to tremble intensely. Even the ground trembled slightly. Hong Tai Long, who was hiding in the river, could not help but extend his head out to take a peek. In the end, he discovered that Yu Qianzhou was looking in his direction and even glared at him fiercely. Hong Tai Long smiled awkwardly and sank back into the water. Chapter 1208. Thump, thump. Yu Qianzhou stood under the tree with an indifferent expression as he continued to strike the ancient tree with palm after palm. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew, and the golden leaves, which looked like countless golden flowers, let out a strange, ing-ing, sound. The ancient language tree in the ancient forest was the same as the ancient language tree in the wood-killer sea. The phenomenon here immediately caused a chain reaction in the other world. The ancient language tree on the hill and the wood-killer sea also let out a strange mournful wail. In the ancient treehouse at the center of the wood monster sea plains, Lu was quietly cultivating. Mu Yuanzi's ears twitched slightly as he sat opposite her with his eyes closed. He frowned and slowly opened his eyes. Gently picking up the wooden staff beside him, he disappeared from the treehouse. He quickly landed under the ancient language tree on the hillside. Looking at the ancient language tree trembling violently in the wind, he couldn't help but let out a cold snort. He pointed the wooden staff in his hand at the ancient language tree, and green ripples immediately appeared on the thick trunk. A window opened, peeking at the outside world. When he saw that it was Yu Qianzhou standing there and hitting the tree trunk, he couldn't help but be stunned. At first, he thought it was Demon King 3 Knights who had come to disturb him, but he didn't expect it to be Yu Qianzhou. What puzzled him was how Yu Qianzhou knew how to contact him through the ancient language tree. You still dare to cause trouble here? Mu Yuanzi let out a cold shout and angrily waved the wooden staff in his hand. The windows on the ancient language tree disappeared, and a wall of light appeared. He stepped out. When Yu Qianzhou saw the mercury-like light wall appear, he stopped attacking the ancient language tree and stood there with his hands clasped behind his back. He looked at the furious Mu Yuanzi walking out of nowhere. Yu Qianzhou. Do you really think I don't dare to kill? Mu Yuanzi slammed the wooden staff into the ground, and the wall of light behind him disappeared. Yu Qianzhou said expressionlessly, of course you dare, but it depends on the person. For example, if the Demon King 3 Knights were here, you wouldn't dare to kill anyone. Mu Yuanzi was slightly taken aback. He didn't expect Yu Qianzhou to be so calm when he saw him. He quickly looked around, and when he discovered that Yu Qianzhou's cultivation had actually reached the late minor god stage, he was shocked. He couldn't imagine how his cultivation had risen so quickly. Suddenly, he narrowed his eyes and said, I was wondering why you had the guts to speak to me like this. It turns out that your cultivation has improved and you have something to rely on. However, I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. There's still quite a gap between your early-stage minor god cultivation base and mine. It's not up to you to act presumptuously in front of me. I'm not being presumptuous. I'm just here to get even with you, Yu Qianzhou said calmly. Seeing his confident expression, Mu Yuanzi couldn't help but laugh and say, You want to settle accounts with me? Then I'm all ears. How are you going to get even with me? There's something I want to ask you. Yu Qianzhou extended a finger. I just want to ask you one thing. Were you the one who told the Demon King 3 Knights the method to open the realm of the divine ruin? Mu Yuanzi looked at his pretentious appearance and sneered. So what if I was? As long as you admit it. Yu Qianzhou took a deep breath. Then I'll tell you. Because of what you've done, over 1 million of my cultivators in the realm of the divine ruins were slaughtered by the Demon King 3 Knights, over 1 million lives. How can I let you go? Mu Yuanzi was startled. Although he was the one who told 3 Knights the method to open the realm of the divine ruin, he really didn't know that 3 Knights had killed so many people. He furrowed his brows and said in a gentler tone, So what? I wasn't the one who killed them. You should be getting even with the Demon King 3 Knights. Do you think that just because you're no match for 3 Knights, you can be my match? What a huge joke. Looks like it'll be very difficult for you to admit your mistake. No matter, it's your fault, so you can't run. Yu Qianzhou suddenly sneered. As for 3 nights, you don't need to worry about him. After I've taken care of you, I'll go take care of him next. Moreover, I'll completely eradicate the entire demon Dao. Such big words. Mu Yuanzi didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he shook his head. He seemed to be mocking Yu Qianzhou for overestimating himself. However, halfway through his laughter, his face stiffened. He teleported into the air and saw a pair of steel claws suddenly emerge from the ground where he was just standing, almost grabbing onto his feet. Fortunately, he was quite experienced in taking root in the ground as a wood spirit and sensed that something was wrong ahead of time. Seeing that his sneak attack was ineffective, Yu Qianzhou couldn't help but feel a bit of pity. He realized that this old fellow really did have some tricks up his sleeve. He was actually able to escape the sneak attack of a late-stage Great God Golden Soul Profound Soldier. With a wave of his hand, the 10 Golden Soul Profound Soldiers, 10 Earth Soul Profound Soldiers, and 2 Fire Soul Profound Soldiers that were hiding in the red rocks emerged and stood majestically beside him. True Samadhi fire. Mu Yuanzi cried out involuntarily. His pupils abruptly shrank as he looked at the 2 Fire Soul Profound Soldiers. He then swept his gaze over the other monsters. He could be considered a knowledgeable person, but this was the first time he had seen this kind of monster. When he discovered that these monsters all had high cultivation, he immediately understood why Yu Qianzhou was so confident. He then shouted sternly, "You really have something to rely on, no wonder you dare to come find trouble with this old man. However, I'm afraid your wishful thinking will fail. This old man can return to Wood Massacre Sea at any time. Yu Qianzhou, can't do anything to me. Mu Yuanzi. I advise you not to bring the flames of war to Wood Massacre Sea unless you want to see you die with her own eyes." Yu Qianzhou slowly walked out from under the ancient language tree and said in a low voice, "Up until now, as long as I've been to a place, no one can stop me from going a second time. I can enter and exit the sealed divine ruin realm as I please. I can do the same for your Wood Massacre Sea. If you don't believe me, you can try. Obediently surrender and I'll give you a quick death." After saying that, he waved his hand again. 70 Earth Soul Mystic Soldiers suddenly emerged from the bottom of the cliff and the surrounding forest. They flew into the air and surrounded Mu Yuanzi. Hong Tai Long, who was hiding in the river, also jumped out. He pointed at Mu Yuanzi in the air and cursed, "Old thing. You also have a day like this. Today, this old dragon will settle the debt of the soul-transforming smoke 100,000 years ago with you." Mu Yuanzi didn't have the mood to reply to him. He was looking around as if he was facing a great enemy. The shock in his heart was indescribable. He couldn't imagine where Yu Qianzhou had gotten so many experts and monsters. The situation was clear at a glance. It was impossible for him to be a match for so many experts and monsters. If he fought, he would definitely die. Suddenly, Mu Yuanzi waved the wooden staff in his hand. A wall of light appeared. He didn't believe that Yu Qianzhou could enter and exit Wood Massacre Sea as he pleased. Therefore, the wisest choice was to hide in Wood Massacre Sea. However, how could Yu Qianzhou let him escape so easily? A thought flashed in his mind: stop him. Even though the wall of light could be activated quickly, it would still take some time. For the profound soldiers with profound cultivation, it was more than enough to stop him. A late-stage Great God Fire Soul Mystic Soldier teleported over. The huge body of Samadhi True Fire directly blocked the wall of light. It waved its 5 claws and clawed at Mu Yuanzi. Mu Yuanzi quickly teleported away. However, the profound soldiers surrounded him from all directions and completely cut off his escape route. They all launched attacks at him. The wall of light, which was only half activated, instantly disintegrated after losing the support of his magic power. Mu Yuanzi's expression changed drastically. He knew that he wouldn't be able to escape today. However, he wouldn't allow himself to be captured without a fight. The wooden staff in his hands suddenly exploded into countless wooden vines that were like spiritual snakes. In an instant, the sky was filled with wood spiritual aura. The wooden vines instantly entangled all the profound soldiers. Taking advantage of the momentary gap, Mu Yuanzi's gaze suddenly locked onto Yu Qianzhou. He decided to capture the leader first. As long as he captured Yu Qianzhou, all the threats would be easily resolved. With a swoosh, he teleported out of the encirclement of the profound soldiers. This was an opportunity that he had obtained at the cost of losing the wooden staff. Yu Qianzhou's eyes narrowed. The moment he met the other party's gaze, he guessed the other party's scheme. A cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He had long prepared to defend himself. Tens of thousands of golden lights exploded from his sleeves and shot out like thunder. They directly forced Mu Yuanzi, who had teleported over, to reveal himself. Mu Yuanzi, who was pale with fright, was instantly pierced by several divine swords. He didn't expect that Yu Qianzhou would have such a divine weapon in his hands that could easily break through his defenses. At the same time, dozens of explosions rang out behind him. The profound soldiers directly used brute force to detonate the wooden vines that were entangling them. The Fire Soul Mystic Soldier completely disregarded the wooden vines and took the initiative to burn through the layers of obstacles before chasing after Mu Yuanzi. The remaining tens of thousands of divine swords rapidly formed a sword net and instantly charged forward. The divine swords that were stuck in Mu Yuanzi's body expanded and instantly sliced Mu Yuanzi into several pieces. However, Mu Yuanzi's body was like flowing water. The moment his body was cut open, it rapidly fused back together. Seeing that there were incomparably sharp divine weapons obstructing him and power soldiers chasing behind him, Mu Yuanzi quickly teleported to the ground. Like the deep roots of an old tree, he directly pierced a hole in the hard rocky ground and disappeared into the ground like a wisp of green smoke. The two Fire Soul Mystic Soldiers that had caught up to him at almost the same time spat out a fire dragon and chased into the ground. Ah! Mu Yuanzi screamed miserably underground. 10 Gold Soul Mystic Soldiers and Earth Soul Mystic Soldiers quickly tunneled into the ground in pursuit. Boom! A dozen holes were blasted open on the side of the transverse cliff. The 10 squads of profound soldiers forced the fleeing Mu Yuanzi out of the cliff in the blink of an eye. Mu Yuanzi's figure once again entered the dense forest below the cliff. The Fire Soul Mystic Soldiers and Earth Soul Mystic Soldiers on the cliff immediately gave chase. The moment Mu Yuanzi entered the dense forest, he displayed his might. After all, this ancient forest was his territory and he definitely had the home ground advantage. In the boundless ancient forest, the giant trees swelled like the waves of the sea. Countless giant wooden arms blocked the pursuing enemies. Although they could not stop the powerful Earth Soul Mystic Soldiers, they were able to delay their pursuit. However, the two Fire Soul Mystic Soldiers were like the vanguards. The true Samadhi fire on their bodies surged and burned the wood demons in the forest until they wailed and howled. They were about to catch up to Mu Yuanzi. Mu Yuanzi had no choice but to flee underground. The 80 Earth Soul Mystic Soldiers that followed closely behind the Fire Soul Mystic Soldiers were like fish in water. They all plunged into the ground. The two Fire Soul Mystic Soldiers and 10 Gold Soul Mystic Soldiers immediately destroyed the eyesores of the tree demons below them, preventing Mu Yuanzi from escaping through the sky. Chapter 1209. Yu Qianzhou and Hong Tailong also chased after him. Just as they saw a bunch of Earth Soul Mystic Soldiers chasing them underground, when the two of them arrived, a loud boom resounded from below. The earth shook and the mountains shook. Ancient trees within a radius of several miles were sent flying. A bunch of Earth Soul Mystic Soldiers rushed out from underground. Among them, a late-stage Great God Realm Earth Soul Mystic Soldier was carrying Mu Yuanzi, whose face was deathly pale. Run! Aren't you very good at running? Yu Qianzhou looked at Mu Yuanzi with a ridiculing expression. This guy actually ran underground to play hide-and-seek with the Earth Soul Mystic Soldiers when he had nowhere to run. If this wasn't courting death, then what was? Hong Tailong also rubbed his chin and said with a sheepish smile, "To think that an old fellow like you who hides behind others would also have such a day, hee." At this moment, innumerable plant elves swarmed over from all directions. Seeing that Mu Yuanzi was captured, all of them became agitated and clamored for him to be released. Otherwise, they would not be polite to Yu Qianqiu and the others. Yu Qianqiu's brows twitched. He looked around and said, "Looks like you want to force me to start a massacre." Hong Tailong nodded his head and said, "N." He was eager to see the world in chaos. He rubbed his palms together and was ready to make a move. Mu Yuanzi, whose face was deathly pale, shuddered when he heard Hong Tailong's words. He said sternly, "Yu Qianqiu. Don't implicate them in the grudge between us." Yu Qianqiu looked over and sneered, "That's easy. I'm not like you who can disregard the lives and deaths of others for your own sake. However, I'll say the ugly words first. You better advise them to be sensible. Otherwise, don't blame me for being ruthless." Mu Yuanzi looked at the 92 God-rank soldiers that were ready to attack at any moment. He knew that once these monsters made a move, the wood elementalists would have no way to resist and would be completely slaughtered. He had no choice but to earnestly persuade the wood elementals in the ancient wood forest to quickly leave and ignore him. After a great deal of effort, countless wood elementalists dispersed while crying miserably. However, they still hid and watched from afar. The entire ancient wood forest was filled with a sorrowful atmosphere. Mu Yuanzi looked around reluctantly, guessing that Yu Qianqiu wouldn't let him go. He sighed softly and said, "Yu Qianqiu. I have another favor to ask of you." "Yay. You sure have a lot of problems." Hong Tailong glared at him with his big eyes. It seemed like he found Qin Lai to be an eyesore. Yu Qianqiu said calmly, "If I can agree, I will naturally agree. If I can't, it's useless even if you beg me. Tell me what you want first." Mu Yuanzi looked at the golden ancient language tree on the distant cliff. After a moment of silence, he slowly said, "The ancient language tree is the only connection between the wood killer sea and this world. Help me destroy it. Lu is innocent and kind. Let her stay in the wood killer sea peacefully." Yu Qianqiu was startled. He also looked at the distant ancient language tree and fell silent for a moment. He didn't reject this request. With a thought, a fire soul mystic soldier quickly flew over. In the blink of an eye, the ancient language tree was drowned in the sea of Samadhi true fire. Immediately, the sorrowful cries of the wood elementals rang out from all directions. When the ancient language tree was completely burned to ashes by the Samadhi true fire, the fire's soul mystic soldier withdrew the Samadhi true fire and flew back. Hong Tailong couldn't help but ask, "Who is Lu?" Yu Qianqiu refused to answer this question. He covered all the mystic soldiers with his divine sense and disappeared from the ancient forest. In the spacious military camp of Utopia, 92 mystic soldiers stood on the drill ground. Yu Qianqiu stood on the general appointment platform and looked at Mu Yuanzi, who was waiting for death with his eyes closed. He asked, "Do you have any last words? If you want to kill me, then kill me. Why are you so long-winded?" Mu Yuanzi sneered with his eyes closed. "Don't you have any words to leave for Lu?" Yu Qianqiu said indifferently. "What do you mean?" Mu Yuanzi's eyes were filled with anger. "Are you thinking of doing something to Lu? Don't misunderstand." Yu Qianqiu lightly waved his hand and said, "I'm afraid that Lu will be worried if she doesn't see you. Why don't you leave a letter to put her at ease? I can help you deliver it. You don't have to worry." Mu Yuanzi refused. He was afraid that Yu Qianqiu was playing some scheme that he didn't know about. "Damn it. I have good intentions, yet you don't appreciate it. If you don't want to do it, I'll do it myself, old thing. I'll deal with you later." Yu Qianqiu pointed at him and scolded. Then, he took out a jade archive and wrote a few words on it. The gist of it was, "Your grandfather is going to the immortal realm to cultivate. I won't be coming back anymore. Lu, you have to cultivate well and take care of yourself." After he was done, Yu Qianqiu disappeared with the jade archive. Hong Tailong was stunned for a while. Then, he chuckled and patted the dumbfounded Mu Yuanzi, saying, "Did you see that? This is how that kid does things. There's no point in arguing with him. Haha." Outside Mu Shihai's treehouse, Yu Qianqiu stealthily made his way over. He peered into the empty treehouse and saw Lu sitting cross-legged on the ground, cultivating. The jade archive in his hand flew over and directly smashed onto Lu's head before falling to the ground with a thud. Lu slowly opened her eyes and stopped cultivating. She rubbed her head and noticed the jade archive on the ground. She flipped it around and looked at it, but it seemed like she had never used it before. When she injected her divine sense into it, she immediately saw the contents inside. When she finished reading it, tears rolled down her cheeks and she cried out, "Grandfather." Outside the treehouse, Yu Qianqiu secretly shook his head. He thought to himself, "I've done all I can." He came and left quietly. After returning to Utopia's military camp, Yu Qianqiu walked up to Mu Yuanzi with a solemn expression. Without waiting for him to speak, Yu Qianqiu mercilessly smacked his head with his palm. In an instant, a misty green wood element exploded out, covering the sky and earth. Wherever the wind blew, flowers and trees would grow wildly. Very quickly, the area within a radius of several dozen kilometers became a boundless green sea. Yu Qianqiu forcefully held onto a wriggling green ball of light with both hands. He immediately erased the memories of the primordial spirit within it and sucked it in like a whale drawing in water. Then, he dashed over to the stage and sat down cross-legged with his eyes closed, guiding the massive energy into his dantian. Once it entered his dantian, the essence within the ball of light transformed into Mu Yuanzi's image. He pounced on the green crystal bead and swallowed it. In an instant, his entire body shone with green light. Among the 5 great spirits in the world, the wood spirit had finally returned to its position. Together with the other 3 great spirits, they circled around the nascent soul in his dantian. Only the water spirit's position was left empty. After swallowing Mu Yuanzi, Yu Qianqiu slowly opened his eyes a few days later. Seeing that he had woken up, Hong Tailong immediately dashed over and asked impatiently, "How is it?" Yu Qianqiu stood up and sensed the cultivation in his body that had swelled up to the point that he could not quite get used to it. Although he could not hide the excitement on his face, he put on an extremely regretful expression and shook his head. "My cultivation is at the late stage of minor god, and Mu Yuanzi's cultivation is at the peak of the middle stage of great god." Sigh. "It's too slow. You're still trying to act like you've gained something," Hong Tailong said in extreme disdain. "You can just keep on showing off on the inside." Haha. Yu Qianqiu could not help but burst into wild laughter. After a long period of indulgence, he actually revealed a bitter smile. "I'm afraid my cultivation will stop here. I don't know how many years it will take for me to break through again. It's a pity that I won't have the chance to swallow those water goddesses you mentioned. I wonder if there are any other water spirits out there." Hearing his lament, Hong Tailong suddenly calmed down. He frowned and asked, "Are you going to eradicate the demon path led by Demon King 3 Knights next?" "Of course," Yu Qianqiu said with great ambition. "With my current strength, dealing with Demon King 3 Knights shouldn't be a problem." "Why? Are you still not going to deal with Yi Tiankong because of his relationship with Yi Tiankong? If that's the case, you don't have to go out. I can handle it. Although I don't know what the mission you received from Ancestor Coiling Dragon is, I really don't want to deal with Yi Tiankong's father directly." Hong Tailong smiled bitterly. "After all, I've fought with Yi Tiankong before. Damn it. Not to mention that you don't know, even I don't know what the task of administering punishment on behalf of heaven is." Yu Qianqiu muttered to himself before coughing and saying, "You don't have to show yourself, but you have to guide me to the netherworld divine mansion opened by Ancestor Coiling Dragon." Hong Tailong raised his head in shock. "What for?" Yu Qianqiu slowly paced around and said in a low voice, "The demon path has a lot of people, and who knows how many people there are in the demon world. No matter how high my cultivation is, it's impossible for me to completely eradicate them. So I want to go to the netherworld divine manor and find Wang Qing and his father. As long as I can suppress the demon world's experts, with their connections in the netherworld and immortal realms, they will be able to quickly reorganize their army to counterattack the demon path." I believe they will be very willing to do so. Then that father and son will really benefit from it. Hong Tailong clicked his tongue. Yu Qianzhou snorted. Benefit my ass. After they clean up the demon path, I'll kill the father and son. This is the price they have to pay for abandoning Mu Tianjiao. I want their entire family to be buried with Mu Tianjiao. Towards the end of his sentence, his expression and voice became stern. What he did not know was that it was not that Wu Xiong did not want to bring Mu Tianjiao away, but that Mu Tianjiao was unwilling to go with them. This was actually a gargantuan misunderstanding. However, no matter how they tried to explain, Yu Qianzhou wouldn't believe them. Hong Tailong did not have any doubts about this. After a brief discussion, the two disappeared from Utopia. When they reappeared, they were already in Twilight City. At this time, the Demon Path army had already used iron-blooded methods to pacify the entire Netherworld. The heroes of the Netherworld only dared to be angry, but did not dare to say anything. They succumbed to the despotic power of the Demon Path and allowed themselves to be exploited. Twilight City was naturally under the control of the Demon Path. The two of them appeared in Twilight City without alarming anyone. Under Hong Tailong's guidance, the two of them quickly flew in the direction where the huge human-headed snake statue was facing. This place was not far from the Netherworld River basin, so the two of them quickly arrived above the Netherworld River. Hong Tailong said as he flew, I have never been to the Netherworld Divine Manor, but I know that the basin where the demon god statue is facing is the widest basin of the Netherworld River. In the middle of this basin, which is also the deepest part of the Netherworld River, is the entrance to the Netherworld Divine Manor that Patriarch Coiling Dragon opened back then. Chapter 12:10. Yu Qianzhou replied with an, "Oh," and looked back at Twilight City. Unfortunately, he couldn't see the broken statue anymore. He couldn't help but ask curiously, so that broken statue is the statue of the demon god. Why did so many powerful ancient gods not leave any statues in the three realms, but this unknown demon god? Nobody knows about you? Are you kidding me? Hong Tailong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He pointed at him as he flew, not knowing what to say. What's wrong? Yu Qianzhou was puzzled. Did I say something wrong? Could there be a demon god among the ancient gods in the legends? But why have I never heard of it? Hong Tailong scratched his head and didn't know how to explain. He smiled bitterly and said, this demon god appeared earlier than the ancient gods, but when the ancient gods became famous, she was already gone. It's not strange that you haven't heard of her. In fact, there aren't many people who know of her. If I wasn't from the dragon race, I might not have heard of her either. Oh. Seems like she's a very powerful person. Tell me, what's going on with this demon god? Since the journey was boring, Yu Qianzhou suddenly became interested. Let me explain it to you this way. Hong Tailong organized his thoughts and explained with a solemn expression, the demon god was originally a servant of Tao. My dragon race's coiling dragon ancestor and phoenix race's great phoenix god were the left and right envoys of the demon god a long time ago. I heard that the demon god was later sent to another spacetime by Tao. I don't know if it's true or not. Anyway, the demon god disappeared after that. Since then, my dragon race's coiling dragon ancestor and phoenix race's great phoenix god directly listened to Tao. Do you think she's powerful? Powerful. Yu Qianzhou took a deep breath and said in shock, even great phoenix god and coiling dragon god are her envoys. Oh my. Then how high is her cultivation? I wonder if she's compared to the former great god Yi. Whose cultivation is higher? I don't know about that. I've never heard of them competing before, so I can't compare. Hong Tailong scratched his head and pondered, but the demon god appeared earlier than great god Yi. It should be because the demon god's cultivation is higher. Otherwise, how could the dire monster goddess Nuwa have become the maidservant of the Tao? What? When Yu Qianzhou heard this, it was as if he had been struck by lightning. He suddenly grabbed Hong Tailong, and the two of them stopped above the vast Netherworld River. Hong Tai-long was instantly baffled. He realized that Yu Qianzhou's hand, which was grabbing onto his arm, was actually trembling. He asked in astonishment, "What's wrong with you?" You, what did you just say?" Yu Qianzhou's voice trembled. It was hard to tell if he was excited or shocked. He tried his best to calm down and asked, "What did you say the demon god was called? Can you repeat it? I didn't hear you clearly. What's the name of the demon god?" Hong Tai-long was at a complete loss. With a blank expression, he said, "The name of the demon god is Nuwa." "What's wrong? Is there a problem?" Nuwa. It's actually Nuwa, a human head and a snake body. I was wondering why this sculpture looked so familiar. Yu Qianzhou suddenly turned his head and looked in the direction of Twilight City. However, he could only see the vast Netherworld River and nothing else. He looked in that direction with a confused expression and muttered to himself, "Nuwa. It's actually the Nuwa who refined the multicolored stone to mend the sky. So Nuwa was originally a person of this world. What's going on?" When Hong Tai-long heard him mumbling to himself, he could not help but nudge him and ask, "What are you talking about this time? What refining the five-colored stone to mend the heavens? What people of this world? I've never heard of any of them. Don't tell me you've met Goddess Nuwa." Goddess Nuwa, what a familiar name. Yu Qianzhou's face was filled with bitterness. Suddenly, he thought of something and grabbed Hong Tai-long again. He asked with widened eyes, "What did you just say? You said that the dire monster goddess Nuwa was sent to another spacetime by the Tao? Which spacetime is it? Are you crazy?" Hong Tai-long pulled back his sleeves and said with a baffled expression, "That's what the legend says, but how would I know which spacetime she was sent to?" "You're asking me, but who am I supposed to ask? I say, did you take the wrong medicine? Why are you competing with Goddess Nuwa? The Netherworld River is below. Even if your brain is filled with water, you should jump down first. Damn you, why am I competing with her? She's the one competing with me, alright?" Yu Qianzhou said with grief and indignation, "Damn it. Of all the names she could have, why did she have to be called Nuwa? Isn't this a trap? Who did I offend to be sent here to trace the source? She's competing with you?" Hong Tai-long revealed a mocking smile. He was just short of saying, "You think you're worthy?" However, he was startled right after and couldn't help but let out a soft gasp of surprise. He muttered, "Refining the multicolored stone, refining the multicolored stone." Hearing this, Yu Qianzhou's eyes lit up. He grabbed Hong Tai-long's neck with both hands and shook him, saying, "Have you heard of this legend as well?" His current cultivation was much higher than Hong Tai-long's. How could Hong Tai-long endure his death grip? Hong Tai-long's eyes rolled back as he was pinched to the point where his eyes rolled back. With great difficulty, he managed to pry Jiang Yi's hand away. He roared, "Are you crazy? This old dragon has a grudge against you." It was a slip of the hand, a slip of the hand. After apologizing profusely, Yu Qianzhou said with sincerity, "Have you also heard of the legend of Nuwa refining the multicolored stone to mend the heavens?" "Tui. Where did you hear that lousy legend? Mend the heavens? I think it's more like mend the earth. Why don't you mend the heavens for me to see?" Hong Tai-long pointed at the illusory sky in annoyance. He twisted his neck that was being strangled. After relaxing for a while, he said, "Speaking of refining the multicolored stone, I vaguely remember hearing another legend when I was in the dragon race. It seems like the demon goddess Nuwa also possesses the 5 elemental mystic arts just like you. I don't know if I've remembered wrongly or if I've really heard of it before. My Lord Tai-long, please don't remember wrongly." Yu Qianzhou bowed repeatedly and pleaded, "Please think carefully again." Hong Tai-long waved his hand, indicating that he shouldn't disturb him. Yu Qianzhou immediately held his breath and waited with rapt attention. He looked at Hong Tai-long's wandering gaze as he racked his brains. After a long while, Hong Tai-long scratched his forehead and said, "I seem to have heard someone say this back then. They said that if a person was proficient in the 5 elemental mystic arts, then that person would have grasped one of the most mystical sources in the world and could create a living person out of thin air. It seems like someone used Goddess Nuwa as an example and said that Goddess Nuwa could create humans. Then, according to this saying, doesn't it mean that Goddess Nuwa was also proficient in the 5 elemental mystic arts? As he said that, he shook his head and said, I really can't remember clearly. It seems like I've heard someone casually mention it once. As for the specifics, no matter how you force me, I can't remember it. Nuwa created humans. Yu Qianzhou was once again dumbfounded. He couldn't help but look at his own hands. Although Hong Tailong couldn't remember clearly and had only vaguely summarized it, he had heard of the legend of Nuwa creating humans from clay in his previous life. There was indeed such a legend. In other words, Nuwa might really be proficient in the 5 elemental mystic arts. Conversely, the legend of Nuwa creating humans in his previous life was very likely real. It wasn't just an illusory legend. Using the same logic, it meant that as long as he cultivated all the 5 elemental mystic arts, he would be able to create living humans. What kind of mystic art would that be? Nuwa mending the heavens. Yu Qianzhou's eyes flickered as he raised his head to look at the void. Since it was true that Nuwa created humans, then it was very likely that Nuwa mending the heavens was also true. However, how could this illusory sky be broken? Just as he was thinking about it aimlessly, an idea suddenly flashed through his mind, causing his body to tremble. If it was in his previous life, he definitely wouldn't be able to figure out how the illusory sky could be broken. However, he had found the reason now. The so-called breaking of the sky could be understood as an opening in the sky. It was very likely that the passageway between the 2 realms or someone with high cultivation had directly torn open the void. As for the so-called Nuwa refining the 5-colored divine stone to mend the heavens, it was because of the 5-colored light that shone when she took out the 5 elemental mystic arts. This caused people to misunderstand that she had actually used the 5 elemental mystic arts to seal the passageway between the 2 realms. This reason was the most perfect answer. If it was said that the legend of Ho Yi still made Yu Qianzhou uncertain about anything, now the matter of Nuwa completely matched the legend of his previous life. In other words, the time and space that Tao sent Nuwa to was actually the time and space that he had been in his previous life. Similarly, it meant that it was completely possible for him to return to the time and space that belonged to him, provided that his cultivation had reached a certain level. The blood in Yu Qianzhou's heart was instantly boiling. No matter how glorious he was in this world, there was always a sense of estrangement. He was born to be incompatible with this world. Even though he knew that there was no hope of returning, his heart was still haunted by the world that he had been in his previous life. The sense of belonging to the Chinese people in his previous life had always been deeply buried in his heart. That was the destiny of his soul. But today, on this very day, he suddenly found a way to return to his previous life. Even though this method was extremely uncertain to him at the moment, he was full of ambition. He firmly believed that there was no difficulty that could stop him from returning. The strong sense of belonging filled him with hope for his future. Even if the future was filled with thorns and obstacles, he would never take a step back. From the first day he came to this world until now, this was the first time he had such a clear and impartial goal: to return home. Hey! What's wrong with you? Hong Tailong nudged the bewitched Yu Qianzhou awake. With a face full of suspicion, he asked, "Tell me honestly, why are you so interested in the matters of the demon goddess Nuwa?" Yu Qianzhou looked at Hong Tailong, his eyes almost brimming with tears. He opened his arms and hugged Hong Tailong tightly. He patted his back forcefully and said, "This trip is worth it. It's King worth it." Hong Tailong. Yu Qianzhou, thank you. Chapter 12:11. No. Hong Tailong pushed him away, looked at him from head to toe, then shook his head and said in a deep voice, "Definitely not. Kid, you must be hiding something. Tell me honestly, what the hell are you doing?" Yu Qianzhou put on a serious look and said seriously, "It's about the great task of punishing on behalf of the coiling dragon god, so I can't tell you." You. Hong Tailong popped out his eyes, swung his sleeves, and became speechless. Hee. Let's go. Let's keep moving. When we have a chance, I'll treat you to a cigarette and you'll understand. Yu Qianzhou happily kept flying forward, his heart filled with endless longing. Dreams were beautiful, but reality was cruel. Smoke? Hong Tailong followed Ji Hao with confusion, asking him what he meant by smoke. Nowadays, the river Styx wasn't peaceful. Back then, Bai Qi and Jean Tai dared not to attack the aquatic creatures of the river Styx because of the Netherworld Divine Palace, but the army of Devil didn't care about that. They were worried that they couldn't find a suitable opportunity to attack the Netherworld Divine Palace, and so, the aquatic creatures of the river Styx suffered. After settling the Netherworld warriors on land, a few Devil Kings were sent to lead the army of Devil to wipe out the aquatic creatures along the river Styx. Any aquatic creature that dared not to surrender was exterminated. As for those who had surrendered, they were forced to be the vanguard of the army of the Devil League. In the end, almost all of the water clan of the Netherworld River that had surrendered were driven to the widest area of the Netherworld River Basin, and the Netherworld Divine Palace was surrounded inside and outside. Yu Qianzhou and Hong Tailong were heading to the Netherworld Divine Palace, so it was inevitable that they would run into them. In the widest area of the river Styx, a small island stood in the middle. On the island, fires were sparkling, and there were delicacies and wine, as well as beautiful dancers and dancers. Evil Spirit and Snake Xiu, the two Devil Kings, had their arms around the beautiful girls on both sides. Sitting below them, their subordinates were raising their glasses and drinking. Some of them were even doing lustful things in front of the crowd. The entire island was suffused with a lustful atmosphere. The beautiful women serving on this island were all good-looking ones from the aquatic creatures of the river Styx, such as Li Li, the third princess of Li Palace. At the moment, Snake Xiu was holding her in his arms, groping her from head to toe, and even offering her wine with a forced smile on her face. She couldn't do anything about it. The lives of her parents and the people of Li Palace were all in Snake Xiu's hands. If Snake Xiu didn't satisfy her, a black carp would be slaughtered, carried to the island, roasted, and shared. While drinking, Snake Xiu raised his cup to Evil Spirit, who was sitting on the opposite side, then drained the cup with one gulp. Next, Snake Xiu held Li Li in his arms and rolled on the bed. More or less, Li Li still cared about her sense of shame. When her clothes were taken off by Snake Xiu, she didn't forget to put down the veil hanging on the bed. He was just trying to deceive himself. What could a layer of gauze do to the cultivators outside? Not to mention, it was illuminated by the flames. When the people outside saw the overflowing scene inside, they all burst into laughter and went about their own business. Great Demon King Chi Mei didn't back down either. He directly dragged two aquatic beauties to the bed and enjoyed himself to the fullest. At this moment, Hong Tailong's laughter could be heard from the sky. These evil people are indeed having a good time. People on the island raised their heads and looked at the sky. Demon and Snake Xiu directly pulled down the black carp and shouted at the sky, "Who's there?" At the moment, Yu Qianzhou stood in the air with his hands held behind his body, sneering. The first people he paid attention to were surely the two people who were qualified to sit on the bed. With his current power, he wouldn't put them in his eyes at all. However, he paused as soon as he glanced around, because he saw Li Li, who was still under Snake Xiu's body and had her breasts exposed. They were old acquaintances, so Li Li surely knew him. Seeing him, she paused as well. Lying on the bed, she turned her face away in shame. Even in his dreams, Yu Qianzhou had never imagined that the lofty and virtuous third princess of Li Palace would actually do such a thing in such an occasion. He had thought that he had seen wrongly. After all, there were people who looked similar, and the other party had also taken off her clothes. However, the other party's reaction immediately made him understand that the woman who was having fun under the crotch of a devil was really the third princess of Li Palace, Li Li. Yu Qianzhou sighed slightly in his head. He roughly guessed that Devil Dao had been running rampant in the three worlds, and that she was probably forced to do this. But, as a former princess, she had fallen to such a state, which made people sigh with emotion. Down below, Demon and Snake Xiao had already swiftly put on their clothes and dashed up. Yu Qianqiu conveniently threw out a pair of divine swords. As a late-stage divine god, dealing with two middle-stage small god devil kings was as easy as blowing off dust. Two beams of golden light flashed as fast as lightning bolts. Before the two devil kings could say a word, they burst into shrill screams and were chopped into a rain of blood. The alarm was sent out. Immediately, countless devil armies and water-kind creatures surged out of the Nether River. However, seeing the two devil kings being killed so easily, they immediately realized that a powerful being was coming. Therefore, none of them dared to make any reckless moves. Yu Qianqiu glanced at Li Li, who had hurriedly put on her clothes, then turned around, looked at Hong Tailong and said, "Is the Netherworld Divine Palace down there?" "Indeed. Why don't we slaughter these bastards first?" Hong Tailong said as he rubbed his palms together. However, Yu Qianqiu had already teleported down to the island. Glancing at Li Li, who was wearing a sexy and revealing outfit, Yu Qianqiu thought for a while and decided to pretend that he didn't know her. He turned his back to her. Hong Tailong flashed down, but didn't find anything strange. Instead, he asked again, "Are we just going to let them go like this?" Yu Qianqiu raised his head and glanced at the crowd in the sky, then at Li Guang and Snake Xiao, who had also turned their heads away in shame. With a cold look in his eyes, Yu Qianqiu growled, "If you don't want to die, piss off. Anyone who stands in my way will die." Li Li looked at Yu Qianqiu, who was wearing a cyan robe and standing with his hands clasped behind his back. She had heard about how Yu Qianqiu fought against Demon King 3 nights long ago, but she didn't know that Yu Qianqiu had already become so powerful that he could easily kill two devil kings. After a moment of hesitation, she sent a pleading voice transmission, "Yu Qianqiu. Please save my Li Palace's water tribe. As long as you save my Li Palace's water tribe, Li Li will be your slave and servant to repay you." Yu Qianqiu didn't turn his head. He only furrowed his brows and replied with a deep voice transmission, "Third princess, it's fine if you fall into depravity because of a moment of helplessness, but you mustn't abandon yourself to depravity. That will become a habit, and there's no cure for it. I, Yu Qianqiu, don't need you to be my slave or servant. It won't be long before the time to counterattack the devil path arrives. Take care of yourself." With that, he waved at Hong Tailong, and the two of them flashed into the underworld river. Li Li looked at the tattered gauze on her body and bit her lips. After Hong Tailong and Yu Qianqiu dove to the bottom of the underworld river, which was several thousand meters deep, they discovered a huge gate that was glowing with fluorescent light on the mountain wall at the bottom of the river. The top of the gate was embedded with a water-repelling pearl that glowed with a gentle white light, and the words, "Netherworld Divine Manor," were engraved on the beam below it. There were still quite a few people guarding the gate. The two of them lightly flew over, and none of the guards dared to stop them, so they all moved aside. Hong Tailong directly went forward and pushed open the gate. Immediately, he saw a white light swirling around the passage between the two worlds. The two of them flashed into it and disappeared. When the two of them reappeared in a world that was bright and beautiful with sunlight, there were quite a few meditation cultivators and blue-clothed people who immediately flashed over from both sides. They stared at them like tigers watching their prey. Among them, someone actually cried out in surprise, "Yu Qianqiu." Yu Qianqiu had not expected that someone would recognize him the first time he stepped into the Netherworld Divine Manor. He looked at that person and realized that he did not know him. However, from his attire, he could tell that this person was from the Unrequited Love Palace. Clearly, this person had seen him before. Therefore, Fang Xingjian shook his head and smiled at Hong Tailong, saying, "Looks like I didn't find the wrong place. Wang Qing and his son are really here." He then turned back and said to the person who had spoken, "Tell Wang Qing that I'm here and I want to meet him." Although these people were on guard, they did not act recklessly. Simultaneously, a meditation cultivator and a disciple of the Unrequited Love Palace left at the same time. On the other hand, Yu Qianqiu and Hong Tailong strolled forward and observed their surroundings. Not long after, over 10 streams of light arrived at the same time. Wu Feng, Wu Xiong, Wang Qing, and Madame Blackpool were all present. There were also quite a few old fellows. Yu Qianzhou paid attention to the cultivation of these old fellows and realized that they were all at the god level. The one with the highest cultivation had actually reached the mid-stage of the great god level. It could be seen that this netherworld divine manor was indeed a place with crouching tigers and hidden dragons. The moment Wu Xiong saw Yu Qianzhou, he flew into a rage. He pointed at Yu Qianzhou and scolded, "Yu Qianzhou! How dare you come here to die?" It would have been better if he had not spoken. The moment he spoke, Yu Qianzhou thought of the dead Mu Tianjiao. Without hesitation, he raised his hand and grabbed. Wu Xiong immediately felt a strong suction force. He was sucked over like a leaf. How could a mere immortal emperor like him go against the current Yu Qianzhou? Wu Feng and the others were shocked. The mid-stage great god elder standing in the middle immediately teleported over and grabbed Wu Xiong, forcefully dragging him back. However, after this exchange, his expression also changed. He realized that Yu Qianzhou's cultivation was actually higher than his. No wonder he could not see through Yu Qianzhou's cultivation. Yu Qianzhou was not here to kill, so he stopped. However, he pointed at Wu Xiong, who was still in a state of shock, and shouted, "If I want to kill you, it will be as easy as lifting a finger. These people cannot stop me. You are a despicable person who can even abandon your wife to escape. Killing you will dirty my hands. Scram to the side, there is no place for you to speak here. You are Yu Qianzhou." Wu Feng walked out. The divine wind staff in his hand lit up. He sneered and was about to speak, as if he was laughing at Yu Qianzhou for boasting and wanting to use the divine wind staff to teach him a lesson. Who knew that the mid-stage great god elder stretched out his hand to stop him? The elder shook his head and said, "You are not his match." As soon as these words were spoken, it wasn't just Wu Feng, even Wang Qing and the others were quite shocked. They sized up Yu Qianzhou with surprise and bewilderment, and they slightly doubted whether this person was really Yu Qianzhou. Wu Feng even cried out, "Godfather! Are you seeing things? Godfather? Damn!" Yu Qianzhou glanced at the two of them and cursed in his heart. I was wondering why Wu Feng dared to hide in the netherworld god manor. It turns out that he found a godfather here. The mid-stage great god elder cupped his hands and said, "This old man is Wan Tianbua. I didn't think that there would be an expert like Little Brother in the Three Realms. I wonder why Little Brother has come to the netherworld god manor." You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.